Here.
Here.
Here. Here.
Here. Stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. We have a long meeting tonight, so let's get started.
Don't say that.
I'm the realist in the room this evening. First public comment scheduled. We have a presentation of a proclamation recognizing Alan Harmon and, could somebody please help me with this name? If you're in, Korjaharov. Thank you so much. Insurance agency's 100-year anniversary. I have the proclamation here and I'd like to read it. Whereas Alan Harmon and Korjaharov Insurance Agency is celebrating their 100th year of service. And whereas the agency was started in 1917 by J.B. Allen and Sarah Allen in the city of Battle Creek, and whereas the Rochester branch was started in 2010 by Dayan Karjaharov, and whereas the high level of professionalism of the staff of this outstanding organization is a great benefit to our community. And now, therefore, be resolved that the City of Rochester City Council extends their best wishes to Alan Harmon and Karzahoff Insurance Agency celebrating their 100th anniversary milestone. Congratulations. Please come forward. Next, do we have somebody from Mothers Against Drunk Driving here this evening? Wonderful. I can go ahead and read this one. Next is the presentation of a proclamation recognizing Mothers Against Drunk Driving and their Power Talk 21 program. Whereas Mothers Against Drunk Driving, MAD, started in 1980, is a nonprofit organization whose mission is to end drunk driving, help prevent drug driving, support the victims of those violent crimes, and prevent underage drinking. And whereas Power Talk 21 Day, April 21st, is the National Day for parents to talk to their teens about alcohol. Whereas MAD provides tools and handbooks to prepare parents to talk with their teens about the danger of drinking alcohol before 21 on Power Talk 21 Day. Now be it resolved that the Rochester City Council supports efforts to raise public awareness about the dangers of underage drinking on this 24th day of April 2017. Please come forward. And we have one more. Presentation of a proclamation recognizing Neighborhood Child Care Center's 40th anniversary. Whereas Neighborhood Child Care Center, NC3, is celebrating their 40th year of service. And whereas NC3 has provided countless numbers of families a safe, loving, and healthy child care environment, and whereas NC3 is committed to nurturing children's strengths and encouraging them to reach new heights, and whereas the high level of professionalism of the staff of this outstanding organization is a great benefit to our community. And now, therefore, be it resolved that the Rochester City Council extends their best wishes on Neighborhood Child Care Center celebrating their 40th anniversary milestone.
Wow. Mayor, can I?
Absolutely.
And I'd just like also to add that Todd and Mary are accomplished tennis players who have played out there for the last 40 years or so.
Yes, and they part of the community garden too, I know, because I see them there all the time. Wonderful. Next will be the presentation of the 2017 resident survey. Mr. City Manager.
Yep, I'm going to call up our management intern, Drew, to actually do the presentation, but kind of to set him up. Basically, I know this is a long-awaited, and I appreciate with our long meetings, the last few council meetings, Drew has practiced this and has promised to keep it under 15 minutes. I know the survey, was a project that he's worked on from the beginning all the way through the end, and has spent, I don't even know, countless amount of hours on. So you'll see a lot of enthusiasm as he knows a lot more than what he's prepared to share in a very condensed version, but he knows that we have a long council meeting, and he'll do his best to keep to his time.
And I'm here for you all, and I understand. So I will. I'll try to keep this brief. And you all have copies of the presentation in front of you. And I've also provided copies of the full survey reports in those binders. And so what Blaine's getting at is that in total the final report's about 240 pages or so. A lot of that's graphs, so don't worry, it's not all reading. And this will be posted online at rochestermi.org/survey, so everyone will be able to see it. And so it's a really exciting opportunity for us to get a better understanding of how our residents feel about our community. Rochester's consistently ranked as one of the premier places to live in the area. Number 1 is a place to raise a family by Wallet Hub. Number 4 is a place to retire. But do our residents feel the same way? And surveying is an excellent way to get objective data about specifically how they feel on a variety of topics. This was a very wide-ranging survey. And so this data is meant to help you all inform your future plans for our department directors, for our city council members, and also as a benchmark for future surveying initiatives. So how are we doing in 5 years compared to today? How are we doing today compared to 8 years ago for our 2009 survey? In its final form, the survey received just under 1,200 responses, 23% of the just over 5,000 that we sent out. That's about what you can expect from a community survey of this size. It was also very well distributed, just over half on the west side of town compared to just under half on the east side. We also broke it up by, we used voting districts as a benchmark for dividing up our responses, and the response rates correlate roughly to how our population's broken up as well. So that's encouraging to see that it's well divided among our community. But perhaps most importantly is that because of the high response rate compared to the size of our community, we've achieved a plus or minus 3% margin of error at a 95% confidence interval. So what that means is that we can be 95% sure that each of the questions is representative of the entire population within 3%. These are some of the highlights.
Can I ask a quick question there?
Yep.
I noticed that from a geographic standpoint, we obviously have a good blend of responses, but in looking at the age demographics in this, it's really skewed to people over 50 having responded. 27% of the respondents were age 49 or younger, whereas that leaves 73% over age 50. 60% of those who responded have 2 or less people in their households. So, geographically, I think this, probably makes a fair bit of sense. But if you were to do some regression analysis as it relates to the sample age and the priorities of the, typically speaking of those sample ages, I think council would be well informed to understand that this may not be as a comprehensive view from, or balanced view from the relative priorities of people in differing age groups and in differing phases of their lives. And so that just stood out to me.
No, and you're absolutely correct about that. There was an overwhelming majority of respondents from the older age demographics, and so to kind of counter that, throughout the pages and with all of the graphs for the individual questions, I tried to include the age breakdowns of how each age group responded within each question as a way to gauge how they varied by age group, because we weren't able to do the weighting that they were for the 2009 survey. So that was one way to try and provide that extra information for you all in terms of
Thank you.
how does it change.
I just
No,
felt it was important to make
no,
sure everyone understands
you're absolutely correct about that.
that. Thank you.
So, with all of this information, we can kind of take a look at the areas that our community rated our community as a whole most highly. The feeling of safety during the day, the quality of our parks, the quality of life, all of these areas rated well above 95% is excellent or good. And this is on a 5-point scale, meaning that they rated this community as a 4 or 5 in all these areas. This extends to our fire protection services, our law enforcement services, the appearance of downtown, and our residential neighborhoods. And these are all really encouraging things. I know that these are areas that the city of Rochester focuses on. And there are many members of our community who participate and volunteer and are part of our boards and commissions to help make these areas as strong as they are. And so these are areas that we all should take a second and pat ourselves on the back for being able to have our community recognize that. But there are also areas that comparatively we didn't rate as well in. It's important to note that in these areas there was not a single question that received less than 50% of responses that were excellent or good. So while these are opportunities for us to improve, it's important to note that they're still comparatively, they're well ranked but comparatively not as high. These opportunities include our employment opportunities, the availability of mental health care, our ordinance code enforcement, and things along those lines. It extends over to availability of housing, governmental transparency, and our quality of street repair. And like I said before, it's important to note that these are comparatively low. So 70% of our community still rated quality of street repair is excellent or good, but there's still areas that we can improve. There are areas to look at and perhaps pay more attention to, and view all across the board. How can we as a community improve in these areas? We also included some questions to try and understand how our community gathers information about the city. How are we communicating with our citizens? The majority said they used the community or the city newsletter. That's a pretty similar number to back in 2009. Local newspaper came in very high as well, where our social media and local televised news were not quite highly ranked. Those may have to do with the smaller size of the community. It's hard to say, but this is how our community reported that they get their information. We also included a section for participants to be able to write in the other sources that they get their information from, and that full breakdown is available in the survey report for you. The most frequent responses were word of mouth, whether that's from their friends, neighbors, community leaders. And that's also an encouraging thing to see, that our community is working with each other to get information about it. It's not necessarily a one-way street, but people are communicating back and forth with each other about this information as well. So we asked a couple more specific questions just to have a frame of reference going forward. We asked our participants, what would your preferred frequency for water and sewer billing be? And nearly 60% said that they preferred the current method of quarterly billing as opposed to monthly or bi-monthly. We also asked, would you be willing to pay $1 per day, $365 a year, to be used directly for the maintenance, repair, and improvement of our road system? I know that infrastructure is a topic that, as a whole, you've all been focusing very hard on lately, and this was a very interesting response to get, that it's almost evenly divided among the three sections. And this is one area that I highly recommend taking the time to look through the individual comments. This was the most frequently responded to section, with over 400 comments, ranging from one word to over a paragraph. And this is where our community shared the information that they'd like to get. What projects, what are the costs, more specific information. This was a very broad question, but there's a lot of useful information for making decisions going forward. And perhaps the most important thing that we can do with this survey is be able to compare it to the past. We were able to find the 1985 community survey in a closet after we had already put out the 2017 one. And while it was not shaped in a way that was easily comparable to today, these were 4 areas that we could compare. And we could see that the quality of life has maintained at a high level according to our community, which is encouraging. And our police and fire services have improved tremendously over the last 30 years, according to our survey metrics. So whether those were specific goals or not, it's encouraging to see that those are areas that the community has improved in. We also have more specific comparisons that we can make between 2009 and 2017. These are 5 areas where the city improved the most. Interestingly enough, employment opportunities, our lowest rated category, was also our most improved category over 2009. Our opportunities to participate in the community, the availability of health care, public parking. There were many comments talking about parking meters, but yet our respondents said they were more satisfied with public parking as a whole. So it's important to look at all of this information in its complete form. And then we get into the areas where there was the most significant decrease. These correlate with the areas that we can improve upon, whether it's our land use, ordinance code enforcement, or as a place to retire. These are all areas that, for one reason or another, and there are comments that kind of talk about these sections as well. And there are areas that we have an opportunity to get better in. And so I talked a little bit about our open answer questions. There was 13 total sections with just over 2,700 total comments, ranging anywhere from a word to a paragraph. It can get a little dense, but the information is there. It really represents how our community feels. So it was hard to be able to break that down for you all and to say, here are the top 10 most frequent comments, because they were much more eclectic than the 13 prompts we gave them, right? How do you feel about mobility as a whole? You get responses all across the board in that section. And so I was able to kind of break down 4 of the most frequently mentioned things. Number 1 was satisfaction with the city. People took the time to point out whether it was an individual department, the city as a whole, or groups of people. Residents took the time to point out their satisfaction with those areas, and that's encouraging to see, that as opposed to only pointing out the negatives that they may see, to highlight what they feel good about. The dissatisfaction with Bigfoot housing, that was a common phrase, expensive housing, and dissatisfaction with the parking meters. But again, with an increase in our satisfaction with public parking, it's interesting to see how that all comes together. And so kind of to bring this all together, and I've mentioned this, this information is to be used as a reference for you all, for our department directors, for the goal making, when you're making goals, when you're making decisions, and having something to reference and say, this is what our community said, on a day-to-day basis, whether it's Blaine or Nick or Anthony. This is information to reference, and it's a building block. This is something we can build upon in 5-7 years if we do another survey and say, here's the areas that we've been working to improve. Let's see if we did. Objectively see if we did. So with that, does anybody have any questions?
Council. Well,
Yep.
just Mayor Pro Tem.
Well, I'll just make a couple of comments. Thank you so much. You did a great job on the presentation and kind of putting it concisely. A couple of things that really stood out to me was the great job of our services, the DPW, the police department, fire department, downtown authority. Those were really the highlights. The one thing that kind of stuck out to me was the code enforcement. And I'll be interested to read did people highlight what kind of code enforcement? Was it housing? Was it, did they kind of pinpoint that? Because it came up a couple of times in the survey as that's the one that kind of dipped.
Yeah. It's hard to say there if just basing off my memory of, I've gone through all of these, but it's hard to remember the individuals. But yeah, it was perhaps more residential, probably. There wasn't a significant number of people saying that house is blighted, or this section of town's poor, or anything, or like poorly maintained, or anything like that. I don't exactly know the specifics of maybe what they're referring to, what our respondents were referring to.
All right. Well, the other thing that I was thinking of is, when I was going through this, is what are our next steps because of this? The billing for the water and sewer, the majority seem to be happy with the roads. A third of people are ready to move forward, but 2/3 either do not want to, or they want more information. So we'll get, probably talk more about that tonight. But is there anything in particular that our new software would allow us to do on some of these, like billing, for instance, or anything in the survey that would help us?
Blaine would know a little bit more about the implementation of the new software in terms of, what sort of options it offers. I can honestly say I'm not that well versed in it.
Okay.
No, I'd be happy to let you go, and then I can answer that
Okay.
part of the question.
But as a whole, for the next steps with all of this it's admittedly we missed the goals and objectives period to be able to have this as a reference for that. But next year, and even as we're going forward in all of the processes that you go through, that our department directors go through, it's meant to be a reference, as a guide, is an area to perhaps what needs more focus compared to something else, or things along those lines.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate your work.
I would like to comment on the software. So I've talked with our finance department about kind of our next thoughts, and actually all of the department directors. We had a full meeting to digest the results, and Drew had a much larger and longer presentation for us as we kind of dove into each section. Specifically, though, with the new software, our ERP software, the finance department is going to allow us to have basically a web portal that will allow residents to basically, look at their usage as well as pay online. So there's going to be some improvements, and I hope when we, it's probably going to be 4 or 5 years when we do our next survey. But I think we can look at, where we, scored, in the high 80s and shoot for, a score in the 90s. And then where things were lower, like the code enforcement, when we're in the 60s, where we can make those strives and actually pull from some of the comments that were actually listed in the back to see what were some of the issues and where we can correct them. So definitely a lot of useful information, and some of the software will allow us to improve.
Any other council members' questions or comments? Wonderful. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Next, we will do miscellaneous public comment. If you'd like to come up at this time and talk about anything that's not on the rest of the agenda, I'd like you to come forward, please.
Well, I'd like to thank the council for receiving me tonight and giving me the opportunity to make the following statement. My name is John Unruh, and for nearly the past 2 years, I've been a resident of Rochester. A number of weeks ago, I took a road trip through some southern states. While momentarily stopped as I was in the process of getting out of a Florida shopping area parking lot, thankfully, I looked to my left and noticed a car slowly moving on an angle directly toward me. The young driver was steadily looking down into his lap, making no effort whatsoever to correct an imminent collision with my car. I can only suppose he was either sending or receiving a text. Upon honking my horn, the driver casually looked up and corrected his path. A collision might have been financially costly to me. It most certainly would have been vexing, especially since I was out of state, and costly to my time. But beyond all that, I was again impressed with what a danger it is to other drivers, pedestrians, and the texters themselves when they text while driving. Until nearly 2 years ago, I lived in New York City for almost 31 years. There were several aspects of New York City life I was not happy with. But one thing I highly approved of was the city ordinance banning the use of handheld cell phones and texting while driving. Based on reliable evidence of this modern danger to society, I would strongly urge the City Council to follow suit with New York City and pass a similar ordinance. I would say that I did inquire of the police a number of weeks ago to see if I could obtain any records of accidents, auto accidents related to texting. Unfortunately, I got no follow-up on that. Well, thank you again for your time.
Thank you so much. Thank you, I appreciate it. Any other public comment this evening? Welcome anybody else? All right, we'll go ahead and move along. Next, we have the approval of the minutes. I will read all three, and if anyone wants to pull certain ones out, please feel free. Consideration of the minutes of the special meeting of March 21st, 2017, the minutes of the special meeting of April 10th, 2017, and the minutes of the regular meeting of April 10th, 2017.
Motion to
I have a motion to
accept the minutes.
accept the minutes by Councilmember Peterson. Do I have support?
Support.
Support by the Mayor Pro Tem. Any adjustments or comments this evening? Madam Clerk, the roll, please.
Dalden.
Yes.
Russell.
Yes.
Dixon.
Yes.
Cuthbertson.
Yes.
Jovenelli.
Yes.
Peterson.
Yes.
Next, we will move to the consent agenda. I have 5 items this evening. Consideration of a special event application from the Professional Law Enforcement Association Foundation to hold a K-9 Police Pumpkin Run 5K on September 30th, 2017 from 8:30 to 11. Consideration of a special event application from the Principal Shopping District Board to hold the 2017 Movies in the Moonlight on July 5th, 15th, 22nd, 29th, and 5th, and we received a addition to the packet with the list of the movies. Consideration of a special event application from the Principal Shopping District to hold the 2017 sidewalk sales on July 13th to the 15th, 2017. Consideration of a block party request from Tanya Dean on Miners Run from 4 to 11 p.m. And consideration of a request to authorize $6,859.96 to Cummings Sale and Service to provide maintenance to the city's generator for 2017-2018.
Move approval of the consent agenda?
Support.
Gonna move approval by Jovenelli, support by Peterson. Did you want to pull a certain?
Pull E, please.
Pull E. Also, we will move to approve A, B, C, and D. Madam Clerk, the roll, please.
Dalden.
Yes.
Russell.
Yes.
Dixon.
Yes.
Cuthbertson.
Yes.
Jovenelli.
Yes.
Peterson.
Yes.
Madam Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, so this is the generator maintenance agreement, and there was 2 that sort of significantly they're not under warranty any longer. That is City Hall and the water tower. Tell me a little bit more about is needed for that, and how long was our warranty for those 2 items? Because the water tower just seems like we did that recently, but maybe not.
I'm going to start this and then maybe ask Shannon to come up to the mic as well. She's the one that drafted the memo and has worked with her staff. My understanding is both the City Hall and the water tower were recently purchased, and then I believe it's about 3 years is the life of the initial warranty period. They have come off of their initial period and thus falling into our normal cycle. But maybe Shannon might be able to add.
That is correct. It's my understanding that the initial warranty period for both of those generators was 3 years. Any maintenance required on those generators on an annual basis was covered under the warranty. The warranty is now expired, and they need to go on a regular maintenance schedule, so they were added to the list for this year.
Okay, so then these are all the current ones that are added to the maintenance schedule, and is there anything forthcoming that is going to be added when it's not in warranty any longer?
Not that I'm aware of at this point, no.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you. Welcome to the first time to the podium. Thank you.
The one thing I would add is we are looking at the Ludlow lift station. So instead of bringing, I guess, the one trailer, if that gets approved with our upcoming budget, we would have the initial, depending on if it's a diesel or a gas generator. So there is one more generator that we are, I guess, down the horizon looking at. I don't know if I know you.
Yeah,
you've been
it's
starting
not
to- yeah.
anything that's been purchased as of
Yeah.
yet. We're still analyzing it, so it would be something that we would be discussing when we bring it to you for approval in the first place. So as of right now, it's not anything that's going to be looking to be added to your annual generator maintenance
All right.
costs.
Great, thank you. So I move to approve.
Move to approve by the Mayor Pro Tem. Do I support by Councilmember Peterson? Madam Clerk, the roll, please.
Dalton.
Yes.
Russell.
Yes.
Vixen.
Yes.
Cuthbertson.
Yes.
Giovanelli.
Yes.
Peterson.
Yes. Next, public hearings. The first public hearing for the consideration of the fiscal year ending 2018 annual budget. Mr. City Manager.
All right, let's see if I can turn on the projector from here and see if it'll warm up.
So for this evening, how this is going to work is we're going to have the city manager do the presentation. I'll open the public hearing. People can come up and speak during that time, and then we actually won't be closing the public hearing this evening. We will keep it open till the next meeting.
Correct.
So,
But we're going home
clarification.
tonight, though, right?
We are, you get
Yeah.
to go home, you betcha.
But you guys can stay if you want.
No, remember, I'm on nurse duty. I have to go home.
Might as well just stay up here. All right, so we passed out, and here's a little bit of the timeline. Looks like our new projector here is starting to actually say I still need to finish some of the settings, so that will fade in a second. Overall timeline, staff and I started really way back in October, and we're near here to the bottom on the 24th, and we have one more meeting on May 8th. We're at the draft stage. That budget was distributed to council at the last meeting, and I'm going to get into a few of the more of the details right now. Our overall revenues for the proposed budget is just under or just over $27.5 million. We have listed out, and again, it's in detail in the budget binders that you guys have, but you can see that our general revenue here is the largest percentage, and then broken down for our other funds. As for our expenditures for our proposed budget, we're at 26.2, so there's a difference of about 1.4 million, and I will rely a little bit on our finance here to answer some of the questions. So that surplus is made up in between. It's what the local. Okay, water and sewer capital improvement and parking. And then there is about 209 and change is our general fund surplus. For the executive summary, kind of just to kind of go through some of the projects that we're looking at out of the general fund is that we've already approved is the $5,000 for the crossing guard, which again I'll point at the end. We are still accepting applications for crossing guards for this season as well as next. The emergency communication software, that would be a web-based system that would allow us to text, email, and do kind of a robocall component. And non-union wage increases, as well as using the tri-party money. Our portion would be the $30,000, and then the tri-party for the other two components are $25,000 and $25,000 to correct the Washington Road sidewalk gap. Again, that's the road that has currently the miles at 55 miles per hour. Sidewalk stops. You end up going onto the street, and then you have to go up the hill to get back on there. So it's definitely a challenge and really a health and safety threat. We've also realized, too, when we started to look at that project, that we have dead ends on the sewer side, too. So when we actually fix the sidewalk, we'll be looking at the water component as well. As for our liabilities, again, pension, we're projecting out if we were to fund the whole pension component right now with the numbers that we have, it would be just over $7 million for the evaluation. And for OPEB, we're at about, and again, these fluctuates based on what we have in our investments at the time. We're about 96% funded. a couple other charts, and we'll have a few more that I'll be able to get into on May 8th, as we're still getting some of this information or updated charts that you guys might recall that we've done in the past. But this one I did want to kind of highlight out. Really down at the bottom here, you can kind of see our residential, industrial, personal, commercial, and then the total. And again, from last year, we're on the upward trend. We're still not back to the 07 numbers, but we're heading in the right direction. Again, I'll be getting a little bit more, and you can kind of see this graphically as we're starting to actually improve. I'll get a little bit more into details with specifics, percentages, and get into each one of these categories on May 8th. As for where we're looking at, again, you can see residential is definitely the biggest breakout. Commercial, personal, and industrial are rounding it out as the small 3%. As for our millage rate, and again, we'll be having a little bit more discussion later on tonight when we're talking about the roads. But back in 08, we're 1.3 mils higher than where we're currently at. And this is kind of showing the overall trend. The red portion is, and I think you might be able to see it down at the bottom, that's the retirement of our debt. As that falls off, that shrinks. And then we've been able to, over time, actually reduce our general operating. So the difference again from here would be about 0.9 mils for the general operating and about 0.4 for the debt service falling off. Here's where I think is a very, so I'm going to spend a moment, very important slide. The total impact as City Council has, and so I kind of picked 4 different kind of just businesses around the area, as well as kind of a splattering of some residential. So you can see really the assessed value is kind of, so I'll walk through. On the left-hand side, we have kind of the street addresses, this just the street name, not the specific address, to kind of give an idea. The type, so if it's a business or a residential, the taxable value of those properties. If we were to implement a 0.75 mil increase, what would that be for each of those properties for a year? And then we have our irrigation and non-irrigation components. When we get the ready-to-serve fee and then the variations, when we start to add up all of those to see what the total impact would be. So, again, if you're looking at the mills and then for the property that would be going into roads, and then we're looking at our water and our sewer component, what would that be, again, using real data from the last 2 years, from 15 and 16, to see how that would have an impact on all those specific properties. So if I just, let's say I took Alice, for example, a residential one, second from the bottom, taxable value, seeing what the mills just for annual would be just about $50. And then we add with the water and the sewer for the fixed component, $192. And then when we get into the variable component for that particular address, probably it's somebody who's really conserving their water. So water and their sewer component. So their overall increase, if everything goes into place, the water and the sewer along with the millage would be just under 270 is what we're expecting. And then if you go up to some of the higher ones, let me pick maybe Stony Creek. So a much higher evaluation, just under 200. We're looking at about a little over 150 for the millage, if it was approved at 0.75, and then again going across, again would have the same standard fixed rate for the water and sewer component, 192, and then their usage. So they're looking at a little over $400 for an increase. Yep, see some questions.
So the irrigation units, the third column over, that's if they used 18 units of water, 47 units of water. Does not take into account necessarily if they went and got a second meter. Correct.
Right, I was going to say, yes,
Yep,
I'm seeing the
okay.
nod here back
Okay.
from, yeah. So if they
So
got
for those-
an irrigation meter, there could be some
Okay.
deductions, so.
So that could save them a little bit money
save
on
them a little
the
bit.
sewer variable.
Correct, on the sewer component.
Okay.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah.
Could I add just a little
Sure.
context to
Yeah.
this? Turn on the mic here. This total impact worksheet came out of a request at the infrastructure committee's work. In essence, Dennis McGee in particular wanted to see this as a resident. If we took the total water and sewer costs that have already been implemented. And if the committee were to recommend to this council a 0.75 mil dedicated millage increase to roads, okay, putting all of that together, how does this look for a sample within our community? And the exercise was mainly to give context to council and to the audience that, again, we'll be talking about that final recommendation on May 8th.
Yep.
But this is a preview of what it means for, for a selection of businesses and a range of residential homeowners. One thing that we did see earlier, of course, was with respect to the citizen survey that, there was this mixed bag view about $1 a day as it relates to roads. What this, in essence, comes down to for the average home value in Rochester is about 35 cents a day at 3/4 of a mil. So the potential millage rate change in discussion is about a third of what the survey question was asking for. So I just want to make sure that that's recognized in this discussion.
Yeah, great point. I think at the time the infrastructure committee was looking between 3 and 5 million for the road component when we were coming up with, and $1 per day kind of seemed like a logical component. As we've evaluated the amount of work and congestion and that sort of stuff, definitely much lower. So it's a great point to note that it's about a third of that dollar, so about 34 cents. To wrap up on May 8th, providing an overall budget and kind of walking through some of the standard stuff that I've done in the past. We'll have the assessors will have hit their numbers in at the end of April. So again, May 2nd is when finance has told me they'll be able to get that for council, and then we'll post that the same evening for our residents on the website. And then we'll be doing a presentation on May 8th. And there's also the infrastructure committee prior to us getting into the budget will be making their recommendations. With the budget, as it would need to continue, I'm going to be presenting both a budget with the millage and without the millage. So the first one, so what you have before you already is without a millage, so that's why you're not seeing that what the value of what a 0.75 mil would actually bring in. We'll have that information on May 2nd before you, so that will be the one with the millage in it. You also already have the one that has it without. There may be a few more tweaks, as finance is telling me, from the assessor stuff, if we'll see revenue potentially go up slightly or go down, but we'll make those for the final one.
Go ahead and then open the public hearing up. Okay, so we're going to now open the public hearing for the fiscal year ending 2018 budget, and I'd like to invite people to come forward for that at this time.
I guess as far as the budget goes, the thing that really always concerns me with is what have you done to rein things in during that period of time? And I'm not sure I'm aware of any really strong decisions that have been made in that decision. I keep seeing more spending on things that, quite frankly, a lot of people are scratching their heads on why do we need that? And so when you get down to roads, and I've mentioned before, you should go back again and take a look at the sheriff's department. I've been asking people in this city whether they have any problems or heard of problems with police coverage in Oakland Township and Rochester Hills. And I go, no, why? And I said, because getting that kind of coverage would have saved us at least a couple $1 million a year. And over 10 years since that event occurred, when I was in here as a county commissioner with the undersheriff by invitation of the entire council, with one doing a flip-flop that night, and it was just, it was demonized through an election and for an election process, and you should take a look at it. When you get an office, you could probably have the same people you have now, but over that period of time, you'd have saved $20 million. That's real money. And like I say, that was a lowball number. Till you sit down and figure out where everything's at and what's needed and what levels of how many police officers you want and all of that. You can't come up with a final number, but you can come up with a guesstimate. Because police will always be a third of the budget. It just always will be. And those cities and that city and township are saving a great deal of money
Thank you, Ms.
by
Douglas.
what they're doing.
Thank you.
So I'd like you to look at some serious cut things. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment this evening?
If I could, on just a quick response. This year was the first year that we actually did a plus or minus 5%, and maybe on May 8th I'll just highlight a few of those so that the public actually can see. We had, I think, over 50 items that we actually highlighted that were adjusted either up or down by 5% or more.
Thank you. Oh,
Good evening, Council. Chairman Mark Albrecht was unable to be with us tonight, and he sent me a statement that he wanted me to read for you this evening. So here we go. Mayor Dalden and members of City Council, I apologize for not being able to present the proposed DDA budget for fiscal year end 2018 in person as I am traveling out of town on business. I've asked DDA Director Christy Trevorrow to read a statement I've prepared. In addition to Christy, the DDA is well represented tonight in my absence with Mayor Dalden, Councilmember Giovanelli from the DDA Board, and Councilmember Peterson, who serves as our DDA liaison, and Vice Chairman Vito Pampalona in the audience. The DDA Board and staff have worked hand in hand with City Administration to address some of the challenges we discussed last year when I stood before this Council. Thank you to City Manager Blaine Wing, Finance Director Anthony Maggio, and Nick Banda for their valuable counsel and support. I'm very proud to highlight some key areas for your consideration as you review our proposed budget for FYE 2018. Last year, you challenged us to get our capital spend over 50% for this year's budget. As you recall, in fiscal year 2016, the percent spent on capital was only 28%. Last year, we raised that percent to 42% for the fiscal year we are currently in, and for the proposed fiscal year 2018 budget, we are now allocating 52% of our total expenditures to capital projects. This is in line with our mission as a board. Let me share with you the three buckets where that capital will be spent. First, infrastructure. Over the last year, on behalf of the DDA Board, I have publicly stated that we will work with the Infrastructure Committee and now our new DPW Director, Shannon Filarecki, to identify and set aside funds to address infrastructure improvements in the DDA district. We asked Councilmember Rob Ray to convey our desire to have a DDA board member assigned to the Infrastructure Committee as a part of this partnership and to get a better handle on financially what is needed each year, the funding avenues available to all of us to tackle this multi-year challenge. We are prepared to allocate up to $250,000 of our fiscal year 2018 capital expenditures toward future infrastructure projects in the DDA district. Normal maintenance. We've also set aside over $200,000 of our FYE 2018 capital expenditures to maintenance in the DDA district, including sidewalk repairs to keep our residents and visitors safe, and our ongoing multi-year commitment to upgrade our streetlights, which is now entering year 3. Finally, over 140 attendees at our April 2016 visioning session told us loud and clear that having a year-round farmers market was a key desirable. We are in the early stages of a deliberate process of completing our due diligence to see if having a year-round farmers market in the space currently held by the seasonal farmers market makes sense economically and aesthetically for downtown. As we progress down this path, we of course publicly share that information and our progress with City Council and our citizens. That being said, we have also allocated up to $250,000 toward funding a bond should Council approve our plans to build a year-round farmers market. Promotions. As a part of our non-capital spend for fiscal year 18, we as the board have allocated $150,000 of our non-capital budget to continue to financially support the PSD and the many promotions they do year-round, including our one-of-a-kind Big Bright Light Show, to support our businesses, residents, and bringing in visitors and revenue to our downtown. The metrics we've seen from the PSD on increased parking revenue, low vacancy rates downtown, the increased housing values, and improved sales from our business owners validate that our investment in the PSD is returning a solid investment. I had the opportunity to share much of this information as our budget workshop held on March 21st. There are no new surprises. However, it is important that our residents hear firsthand from the DDA board how we are planning to spend the revenues that we receive. We take our fiscal responsibility to you, the City Council, and to our residents with the same care and attention as we would our own personal finances or that of our businesses. In summary, we are presenting a budget that supports infrastructure, promotions, ongoing maintenance, safety and aesthetic improvements, while finally proposing an idea with a farmers market that looks into the future while honoring our historical past as a farming community. Thank you again for your attention and careful consideration of our 2018 proposed budget.
Thank you, Chrissy.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment for the public hearing? So, Mr. City Attorney, I leave this open now. Do I just automatically move to the next item? You're a little bit of help here.
Well, certainly, if it's the decision of City Council to keep the public hearing open to the May 8th to consider two different versions of the budget, that would be fine. I think a motion to table the public hearing would be in order to date certain being May 8th.
So moved.
Support. Councilmember Cuthbertson, support by Councilmember Peterson. The Mayor Pro Tem, you had some discussion.
There was only one thing that I looked at, I don't know if it was proposed budget, was the percent of the budget that was plus and minus, that was not on the proposed. Could that possibly be added when you put on the new
May 2nd?
budget?
Sure.
Yes,
Yep.
thank you.
Any other discussion on this item? Yes, Councilmember Cuthbertson.
Thank you. There is a good chance I will not be at the next council meeting, and will prepare some written remarks concerning the budget that I think are probably better put than in as much as we have a full agenda tonight, and we are not going to be undertaking a decision on the budget. Nevertheless, I do think it's important that, at least from my perspective, this council has gone a long ways in terms of looking at, controlling spending and cutting costs. We have probably one of the best records over the last 10 years of any community in Southeast Michigan in that regard. I will also say that for myself, I consider the police outsourcing discussion a long settled matter in this community. I have nothing but respect for the Oakland County Sheriff's Department and think they provide a fine service in other communities. Having said that, and as one member of City Council who was sitting here at that time, the cost savings that were referenced this evening, where when actually explored in greater detail, were nowhere near $2 million per year. I just can't let that statement go unaddressed. I don't, as I sit here 10 years later, recall exactly the number, but the statement made earlier this evening is materially incorrect with respect to those costs. And so with that, Madam Mayor, I appreciate this opportunity to address the matter.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Can I
Madam
make-
Clerk?
can I make
I'm
one?
sorry, yes, Councilmember.
Yeah, I would, just on that, I was also on the city council when we had the police vote, and I think my fiscal conservative credentials are without question, but to me, that was, in all the years I've been on the city council, voting to keep the Rochester Police Department was the easiest vote I've ever had. You can't quantify having the policeman right there at your house, and the feeling of security. And I think when I first ran for office, I said a good city, a great city is a safe city. And as long as we can afford to have a Rochester Police Department, I will always vote to keep that department. Thank you.
Thanks. Madam Clerk, the roll, please.
Dalton?
Yes.
Russell?
Yes.
Dixon?
Yes.
Cuthbertson?
Yes.
Jovinelli?
Yes.
Peterson?
Yes.
Next, we will move to legislative deliberation. Item A, consideration of a resolution to adopt a final project water plan for water system improvements and designate an authorized project representative. Mr. City Manager.
Yeah, our engineer is actually here to answer any questions, but in your packet is the resolution asking for really the final project plan to be approved, and then designating the city manager as the authorized project representative. So I know Chris did a great job presenting at the last meeting, but I don't know, Chris, if you just want to come up and see if there's any questions from council.
Any questions from the council? Nope, we're good. Any questions from the audience?
So well, great.
Do I have a motion to adopt a resolution for the final project plan for water system improvements and designate an authorized project representative?
So moved.
Motion by the Mayor Pro Tem. Support?
Support.
Support by Councilmember Cuthbertson. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, the roll.
Dalton?
Yes.
Russell?
Yes.
Vixen?
No.
Cuthbertson?
Yes.
Giovanelli?
Yes.
Peterson?
Yes.
Next, we move on to consideration of a resolution concerning Clean Michigan Initiative grant and loan and a redevelopment project memorandum of understanding and support for the Rewald project. Mr. City Manager.
Yeah, our attorney is going to actually, Mr. Hayes, go ahead. I know Nick, and you've spoken before, so, and there's a memorandum starting off the packet. The other component that at the end of the conversation, a resolution would be appropriate if council sees fit, so that this project, although it would need to return to our planning commission and then go to city council for final approval, so that it would move forward with our the process at the state. A resolution, like I said, would be appropriate if city council feels.
Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. The packet that you have for tonight's agenda is slightly different than the one you looked at 2 weeks ago. We've modified the resolution so that it more closely tracks the requirements of the application to the state. The substance hasn't changed, but I'm here to answer questions, and the representative from Rewald is here to answer questions if there are things that I may not understand. And there may be several things I don't understand.
Oh, does he have it on? I think he has it. Yeah, it is on. No. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, they didn't see it. Okay. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Bill Masta, and I'm the CFO for Frank Rewald and Son. So,
Oh, go ahead.
questions?
Councilmember Cuthbertson.
I have a few. Prefatory statement. I want to emphasize my interest, expectation, concern, pick a word, that in the course of the development of the actual remediation plan that is in play here, that the city resources within the CMI district, the city property, receive the priority and funding allocation that are reasonably warranted by the circumstances. That is a broad policy concern for me. I think that the resolution as written recognizes that we don't quite know what we don't quite know about what has to get done at this point in time. But as we walk up to that, and I do support this effort, and I do think cleaning up this site and turning it into beneficial use for this community is an important step forward. However, in that context, I want to reiterate to all the parties involved and to the city administration that seeing specifics along those lines in terms of what resources are being deployed to city property that has been encumbered by this legacy third-party environmental pollution is addressed at the same or increased ratio as non-city assets. And so I just want to leave that as sort of a general statement. Having said that, in looking at the application itself to the DEQ, I have two principal questions, and I might even say concerns. One, arguably, may not be for anybody sitting in this room, but I'm curious to understand, and maybe you can help to some degree. There's a projected private investment amount of about $52 million indicated on page 6 of the application. And yet that derives a projected SEV of $14.481 million, which is a very specific number. Seems interesting, or it seems like some work's gone into that. But if you double the, you take a look at this SEV as compared to $52 million, and doubling the SAV lands you at about a $29 million market value. I'm left scratching my head where $23 million went. Both for, I'm sure the developer isn't interested in throwing away $23 million, but I'm trying to appreciate and understand where that is as a tax base moving forward. And so that's question one, and I'm interested to hear, some thoughts on that, because this isn't my number, and I'm not sure I want to sign up for this number, candidly.
What we did is on the application, we took bills from current properties and used those ratios and those numbers to come back to the application number. Realizing the application is what it is. It's an application. It's not a final determination. And at the end of the day, the person who assesses the property, I believe in this case it's Oakland County as your assessor, will determine the true value. What we did is in completing this application is, like I said, we used properties, we know tax bills that were derived from the city of Rochester. We use those numbers in calculating what that is as a comparable to the office building we're trying to construct on phase 11, this first one, and then as far as the overall, we took that same and then spread it over the entire property.
So it's an
It's an estimate at this point. There's nothing to be determined. There's nothing when you sign up. It's an application process. It's just giving you a number to say, this is based on what we had at this time. This is all the information we have. We had to come up with some calculations for you.
So to that end, I think the face of the application itself on page 6 should indicate estimated SEV as provided by developer, and I think something along those lines, or maybe council has a different suggestion, but I'd just like to flag that as being, what it is, and not a determination or something that may be utilized in the process of making a future determination.
I would point out that on page 6, on the column you're looking at, Councilmember, that it says projected SEV. Estimated, projected, approximate, pick your word. If we want to add an asterisk that says projected by the developer, I think we could probably do that.
I would be more comfortable with that. The other question I have relates to page, I believe it's 12 of the grant application, so page 81 in the packet. The page is entitled Sources of Project Funding, and articulates a brownfield grant or loan column, local funds column, developer funds column, brownfield BRA funds, non-brownfield loan, and other sources as being columns for each of a number of different functions, such as investigation, BEA, due care, actual remediation, and construction costs. I see where $2 million lays down under brownfield grant or loan as being, I believe, effectively the loan and the grant that we are considering. It is the column directly to the right of that refers to local funds, public, totaling $800,000, which to my understanding, when I read this is a new number. We've never, to my understanding, been presented information that would suggest that there is local funds somehow involved or being contemplated at this. So the question is, are you projecting a $2.8 million remediation project? And if so, is this how you would propose addressing that?
Let me answer that. I've talked with the developers' representatives about the cost of the project. 2.8 is that could have a $500,000 swing either way. But the $800,000 is not money that the city would simply write to the developer. If that column comes into play, it would be through tax increment financing. And let's just go through a couple of hypotheticals, if I might. The grant and loan total $2 million. $1 million for the grant, which is free money, $1 million of loan, which would be repaid by the developer through the TIF process. If the investigation and the estimates, the remedial estimates, show that the cost will exceed $2 million, then the plan would be to have a brownfield plan that would be scrutinized by the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority for whatever cost in excess we're talking about. They would look at that, scrutinize it, determine if the payback time would be appropriate for the city, and whether the cost elements would be appropriate to be reimbursed under the brownfield plan. So this number may be zero, it may be $800,000.
By extension, it may be 1.8 million.
It could be. We just don't know at this point, and nor could we know at this point until more work and planning is done. So I think for purposes of this application, it would be sufficient if we put an asterisk after the $800,000 and say that the number is supplied by the developer, amount to be determined. And I've talked with James Petrino, who represents the developer, and he agrees that that would be appropriate.
James
Go ahead.
Thank you. And I'm okay with, flagging a number as an estimate, but I want the council and the public to be clear. We are now signing up for participation through a brownfield TIF to remediation costs. So two questions that follow from that. The first one is, how would the cash actually work? How would this be advanced? Would this be city general fund, whatever, pick a fund, city dollars expended, contributed to the cleanup, and then recaptured through the brownfield TIF?
No. The way brownfields work is the developer fronts the money, and then through a reimbursement agreement, would then submit invoices. Those would be scrutinized by the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority for the amount that has already been determined to be for eligible expenses.
Right.
And those expense vouchers or bills would be scrutinized, approved, presumably, or maybe not, and then would be paid only once the incremental taxes are captured.
Correct.
So the developer takes the hit at the front, and then when the taxes are captured, and that only has to occur after 5 years, so there's some lag time here, and is repaid only once the taxes are recaptured.
So you've answered the question, which is, who in essence fronts the money, and I understand the nature of a brownfield TIF. The extension then, or the consequence then of additional monies being put into the brownfield plan in this instance, is to effectively delay in this case, will ultimately be the DDA that is the beneficiary of these monies, but it will take additional periods of time. Again, I don't quite know what the net city level tax dollars would be that would be captured to the DDA. Presumably, it would be longer under this model for the DDA to begin realizing the actual collection of those monies because of the increased brownfield cost beyond the $2 million that's being contemplated, or excuse me, $1 million from the loan side that's being contemplated. So just so everyone understands that the realization event for the new tax revenue would be deferred based on the dollars that would have to go in to the remediation. So, again, I want to see this move forward. Again, this is the project I believe is in the best interest of the community. I do think the community needs to understand the ramifications of what these decisions mean, and that now there's a placeholder for local participation through foregoing tax revenue for a term of years, which we don't actually know what the number is today, because we don't know what the costs are as that would come out of the BEA in essence, that would create the work plan to clean this up. So,
May I amplify something?
yes, please.
The brownfield plan, which will be proposed by the developer, reviewed by the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority, will ultimately come to before this council for approval. So you get a second crack at this, and you get a second crack at looking at all of the numbers that are going to be displayed in that brownfield plan, line by line, line item by line item. So this council will have the chance to review those numbers when they come in.
So is it safe to say when those numbers come in, and you're not gonna give me 100%, but they're gonna be as close to the real number as they can get because they've done all the work to get to that point?
That's our expectation.
Okay, so they're gonna do all the work, they're gonna show up, they're gonna say, I'm gonna make up a silly number, $100. But then it comes back and it could be 102 or it could be 98. I'm just making up a silly number just for clarification. But you're gonna try to get this close as you can to that number, and we get to then look at those numbers and go item by item.
And that's correct. And on that score, the city will, by that time, have its own environmental consultant who will have been experienced in these kinds of things and reviewing those numbers for their accuracy and for the fact that these numbers have to be but-for numbers. But for the contamination, they wouldn't be spending this money, so that the city is not reimbursing out of the TIF monies expenses by the developer that would otherwise be spent for a greenfield site. So there are half a dozen steps from now until the money is reimbursed to the developer.
Councilmember Giovanelli, I think you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Super complex topic, and I appreciate everybody's time, energy, effort, and life force that's gone into it. I also agree it's something we need to, quote-unquote, clean up. But somebody refresh my memory, where's ITT Higbee in all this, and why are we getting stuck? It feels like we're getting stuck cleaning up after them when it's their responsibility. Maybe somebody can shine some light on that for me.
I'm sure that the developer has a view about this, but let me give you mine. ITT worked a very favorable consent decree with the state 10 years ago or so, in which they were allowed to remediate the site to light industrial, whatever that means. What it means is non-residential. And so, and as part of that deal that they worked with the state, they also apparently did not find some things at the north end of the site that have now been discovered by the developer and the developer's consultant. So ITT has deed restrictions on the site, and in order for those deed restrictions to be lifted, there has to be some consideration, and that is part of what the developer is trying to work out with ITT. Right. They have they can amplify that better than I, but essentially the brownfield, or the grant and loan and the brownfield work would be to clean the site beyond what ITT is legally obligated to do. That's why we're talking about this.
Okay, so is this pro forma here including the recovery from ITT or potential recovery for it, or is that in addition? In other words, if the entire project's $50 million, you guys get $2 million from, I'm just picking a number, from ITT. Where does that come off of? I mean, walk me through that.
Zero.
We received zero funding from ITT.
Right, but
We as a developer cannot clean up their mess
so
by law.
All right, so sorry.
Okay.
No, it's like I said, it's super complex, but I want to try and I hate to reduce it down to the so a 5-year-old can understand it, but you gotta consider your audience here, right? Me. So I need to understand, though, from a logical standpoint. So is there a stair-step process, whereas the brownfield has some level of cleanup done by ITT due to what they have to clean up, and then the developer comes in afterwards? And what's in the pro forma that I'm looking at? So does this assume that ITT does nothing, and this is the worst-case scenario, or?
Right now, ITT is doing some remediation. Many of us think it's inadequate.
Yeah, I mean, I remember we did the legacy project, and
right.
It was like, don't disturb the dirt, and you got the metal trailings by the creek. I remember all that.
Right, and the ITT the walls that they inserted by the
Yes.
creek are supposed to convert the contaminants before they get to the creek. There are sources of those contaminants that ITT was allowed to leave in place that will be addressed by the developer's plan. The source removal is better than just leaving it to be cleaned up later. That's one of the primary purposes, as I understand it, for this proposal, is to clean up the source materials, which in the long run will benefit the property and may benefit ITT because they're going to be able to get rid of this legacy that they are. Otherwise, all ITT has to do for the next decade or 2 decades is monitor. That's what their obligation is right now. And in my view, reviewing their monitoring, it shows that the source material is still heading toward the creek. So they are under no obligation to do anything but monitor, or perhaps fix the wall if it isn't working quite right.
Is there any way we can challenge that, though, if the facts and circumstances have changed? Or is this not something that I want to try and exercise as much of our, legislative and options that we can with them, because this is, nobody in this room, was making, magnesium bombs during World War II and dumping stuff in the dirt over there. But we're getting stuck with it, and it's patently unfair.
Go ahead, Councilmember Cuthbertson.
So, to my colleague's point, ITT feels very absent in this discussion, right, in terms of economic contribution. We've heard that is a result of this prior DEQ consent decree that was favorable, we'll say. My question is, to quote the immortal Jeffrey Lebowski, is there's new facts, man. As it relates to the northern parcel, or this area that, have been newly discovered as being an issue, is that a potential reopener to that consent decree? Out of my area of expertise, but it would seem that if it wasn't known or was somehow not disclosed or suppressed, that perhaps the DEQ might be well to look at the substance and the validity of that original decree.
That's certainly a possibility. Also, the statute allows a brownfield redevelopment authority who is paying out the tax increment financing to the developer who has fronted the remediation costs to pursue liable parties for costs for which a liable party would be responsible for. So I haven't seen the data for the north portion. When we get to that point, I'll be looking closely at that, and I will have to advise council and the BRA what their legal options are for the north portion. The southern portion is sort of in that mix, but for the new facts, I haven't seen all the new facts yet. But as we go through the process with the developer to review the work, review the studies, review the work, review the remedial work that has to be done, that's one of the things I'm going to be looking at, is whether or not there are options for the city or the BRA to go after ITT for some of the costs.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So what's the time frame on that? I mean, a developer is obviously looking to do his thing, and are we looking at this weeks, months, years before we get a chance to look at this north study? And 'cause I want to start getting at what our legal options are here with respect to the current problem.
Not years, probably months, probably short months.
Okay. Is there anything we can do to escalate that? Or it just sort of is what it is?
I think my own view is that as the developer works with the city on the plans and the agreements and all of the things that have to go into the brownfield work, that we will be looking at the data as it comes in, because we have to look at the data to make sure that their cost estimates are correct, and then I'll have a chance to study the data, which I haven't seen yet.
Sure. I mean, I just think it's in our best interest to sort of pursue a bifurcated, strategy of working with the resources that we have and partnering and trying to find out if there's anything we can do to compel ITT to, or go to the DEQ and point out some errors or omissions, as it were, to try and get, so that way we get this part going, so we're starting to clean up and get somebody that actually has skin in the game that caused it can pay to clean it up. And then at that point, after that happens, then the developer will have some visibility as to what, they're going to be on the hook for. And ultimately the city. My job as a council person is not to put my, community on a giant hook for, it could be, $800 to $1.8 million to clean this up. We've got, $100 million worth of road infrastructure and water infrastructure I deal with, so this is just, throw it on the, there's not a dumpster full of $100 bills out back of the city hall, so we have to sort of be careful on that.
Understood. I think the
But I want to try and get the people who created that mess to, pay their fair share before we get too far afield than anything else.
Understood. I think the best way to look at it is on parallel tracks.
Okay, good. And I don't know if that's working with the administration or the city attorney or you guys just sort of, but I would like to see a time frame, what our options are, if it's, and you'll dictate to us whether that's an open or closed session discussion, but, this is not time, we didn't come to knit, no pun intended.
I'm
Just-
going to go ahead.
I just want to comment, just realize that we are in negotiations with ITT regarding the covenants that are set on that piece of property. So part of that is that there's
If they
a
learn
lot
the
of
city's
moving
pissed, it
pieces
may
at
help
this
your
time.
cause a little bit, so.
It may, and it
Yeah.
also may not.
All right, well,
So we have to sit down
we'll
and
let
make
you guys
sure
tell
that we
us.
all know how
Sure.
it's working out. But just let you know, it is, as you said, it's a complicated issue. There's many moving pieces, and we're trying to make sure that everyone's there. Obviously, the Rewald family is in good standing here.
Yeah,
and
no
has
doubt.
worked well to make sure that we continue to add to the value of the city of Rochester.
I think to a person, excuse me, if I may, I think to a person up here, we all get that. We want to, we want this to all go away. We want to see that project come to fruition. I'm one for seven, but I get the sense that that's how everybody sort of, feels about it, one way or the other. But, allowing ITT to kind of walk away and not have to do anything is not an option in my opinion.
I'm going to go to Councilmember Bixson and Councilmember Peterson. Councilmember Bixson.
Somehow I imagine ITT is not shaking in their boots.
Yeah.
The city of Rochester is angry with
I don't
them
think so.
somehow, because they probably have cities the size of New York City angry with them. But, I also saw this $800,000 number. Is there a cap on that? I mean, let's say you go in and we've recently had developers go in and find terrible stuff and they couldn't do projects. Is there a cap? What if that number's $5 million? Is the city, I mean, we'll be paying, the DDA will be paying that for 40 years, at that rate. I mean, so is there a cap, yes or no?
I'm going to give you a slightly different answer than yes or no.
Why not yes or no?
Well, let me explain. The amount is to be negotiated between the Brownfield Authority and the developer. It depends on what their numbers show and how much the Brownfield Authority thinks the city ought to be on the hook. I know Brownfield authorities that have said to developers, we're not paying for everything that you want us to pay for one reason or another. We're not going to pay it over the length of time you want us to pay it for, because we're not going to have these projects going on for 30 years. We want them to go on we want the reimbursements to go on for 8 years. So I can't answer if there's going to be a cap. It depends on how things develop.
So that means there is no cap. Is that what you're saying? I mean,
No,
that's
I'm
what you
saying it
said.
could be negotiated. It could be negotiated. I can't answer you in the abstract if there's going to be a cap, because we don't have all the facts yet.
It'll be in the approved Brownfield plan. It'll be an amount approved.
That will come back to the city council, and then we have the right to say yes or no, because we will see those numbers when they come back.
Correct.
Right, but we don't want to not be upfront with the developer, though, once they get this process going. I mean, so.
Because,
Yeah.
yeah. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, for sake of, the discussion on the $800,000, it was a new assumption, right? And it is a material assumption which has never been
Yes.
discussed or disclosed to this body before, right? It is a new column, and it is not an assumption that in the abstract I can agree to. And therefore, again, this is a developer number. That said, the city is actually submitting this grant application, right? It is the city of Rochester that's executing and submitting it. So at some level, it seems a little incongruous that there are numbers here that material numbers here that we're not all kind of on board with, but are going to the state under, our hand, under our seal, as it were. I'm happy to have a conversation, the BRA providing a recommendation to City Council. If there is a number for the city, maybe it's substantially less than that. But I'm not comfortable with saying, yeah, count us in for $800,000, or a future council sees this 2.5 years later, or there's changes in that chair or this chair, and all of a sudden it looks like, well, when the city submitted this application, they signed up for $800,000, and all of a sudden this is the fact, right? That kind of snowballing of this is not something that I want to see get much bigger than the head on the snowman, right? Not the base. And so I again look to council for a suggestion on how to caveat that in a way that says, look, this was somebody else's plug, not ours. And is it even material to the application? Because if it's not material to the application, in some way does not affect the likelihood of this being granted, then pull it all together and let's have a conversation when we have facts. So I guess between those two bookends, I'm looking for a suggestion from council.
Can I respond? So the $800,000, which we explained.
I'm sorry. Who?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm
go
sorry.
ahead.
Jeff Lanier with SME.
Yes, he's been at the meeting that you weren't at, that they came. Thank you.
SME is what?
An environmental consultant,
thank
assisting the developer with brownfield incentives and planning the construction costs. So as far as the $800,000 of local, that was the TIF that we had talked about earlier. And as far as my understanding, working with Michelle Bacon of the DEQ, and she's been up here presenting before, this table is to help the DEQ understand whether or not that they are going to move forward with the project. If there's local support, there's obviously a lot of attachments, a lot of statements being made in this application. What the DEQ would like to know is the city behind this project? Will they support the CMI grant and loan? And as part of that, they ask for these tables of projected numbers, whether the taxable value, eligible costs,
Sure.
Are there other grants that we can leverage? And
They want a pro forma for awarding the money. I get it.
Yeah, they're trying to get the big picture to
Yeah.
see what's there. But I understand your concern is that we do need to define the $800,000 if we do need that money, that additional TIF. Right now, the focus of a brownfield plan would be to cover the CMI loan amount of $1 million, and then that $800,000 is in addition to that $1 million, because that's what we're projecting as far as eligible costs to handle the contamination when we dig foundations and to put vapor barriers in buildings and do all those other controls we talked about at the last meeting. So we have some projected numbers and activities, and we would be more than happy to sit down with City Council at a closed session, open session, and talk about how we came up with our estimates. But ultimately, the total amount will have to be approved in a brownfield plan, approved by the city, and then approved by the DEQ as well.
So back to the question, is it material to the app? I mean, we're submitting an application, we have a resolution, a letter of intent, we've had a representative from the DEQ here, we've publicly, most of us said we support this, we want this to move forward. Is this column material to the application? If it has zeros on there, because there are two other columns that have virtually zeros, is it material to the application?
I think it's material. I also think it's contingent. And the language that I suggested before, which is that this is a number supplied by the developer, the exact amount is to be determined.
If
This
any.
is as close as we can get. So that's why I say it's contingent. And the number does not fly into the city.
Yeah, but it always turns into something else.
And before, if it's $1 or $800,000, that's going to be in addition to the $1 million loan that's TIF'd, that's going to be vetted pretty closely. So
I get it, but numbers on paper tend to take a life of their own.
okay,
And I want to make very clear with this number in particular that it's asterisk, that this is an estimate provided by the developer, subject to confirmation of any contribution, if any, from local funds. Something along that line.
And
stuff, with that showing up in the city's minutes that relate to all of these matters, there's at least a record of what the understanding in the room is, and that's the best I can do to leave, the conversation in a way that people can look to know what the intent of the parties were. Because I'm not intending, as I go to consider this, that I'm in agreement for a brownfield plan that contemplates an additional $800,000. As I sit here, to me, without knowing something, I have to say no. Without understanding or seeing the numbers that you've talked about to the extent that they exist, I'm being called upon right now in an act of faith to agree to a number, or at least represent to the state a number of close to $1 million, without understanding why that number is necessary. And for the first time, seeing it in a package that arrived Thursday night, right? When we've been talking about this for 3.5 weeks, right? So,
if I may correct the council member, that column, I believe, was in the application that was in the packet 2 weeks ago.
I didn't see a number that said local funds, $800,000.
I think it was there.
All right. Well, then I missed it 2.5 weeks ago. But I will say that certainly when we've talked about $2 million here as being what's in play, it was never suggested to us in this setting that there is an additional potential material contribution from the city to remediate this. That was never made clear to any of us in a direct and substantial way. And so that is registering now, and I'm raising the issue accordingly.
All right. One last correction. We have talked, and I have raised the point that there may be an additional TIF on top of the $1 million loan. The number was never discussed because, frankly, that issue is right now, in my view, and I don't want to fight with you, but I think that issue right now is premature until we see the numbers coming in on the brownfield plan.
Well,
and you will have a chance at that point, the council will have a chance to scrutinize those numbers.
Yeah, but let me just say, the number is material now, right? And we were not made aware of a material expectation or potential expectation of public funding at this level. This to me is a surprise tonight, and one that I raised at the end of last week upon seeing this and studying it. And I'll be happy to go back and compare the packets. But this wasn't a part of the advertised lead in this discussion, and I want to make that understood. And so as a result, I feel compelled to get further under the hood on the issue. But for me, $800,000 is without caveats that we've discussed is not something I'm at all comfortable with.
And I'll make sure the caveat is inserted in the application.
Thank you.
Councilmember Peterson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A couple things. I was in Lansing this morning, public policy, and we were discussing Senate Bill 115 through 111 through 115, the My Thrive that they have going on for developers to be able to. And the Senate actually approved it for the TIF capture for the transformational of these brownfield properties. And my hesitation earlier in the vote was not because I don't want to use that and do the grant to do that, but I actually think that there's some other better funding mechanisms coming down the road that I'm told is supposed to be in a couple months coming through the state for that this project would clearly qualify for based on the population of the city and the amount. And I think that's something that I would like to see if, as we're working through all of this, that it's all investigated so you can find out if it would actually be more beneficial to the developer and less on, and not take on such a burden for the city. Because I think that's how it's set up now for that to be. And I think it would be an awesome thing to use because that money is there now to do that. And Senator Ken Horn has been pushing that to bring this back in the other areas throughout the state. So thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. Thank you for putting this all together. There are some surprises in here that we were not anticipating. I think it's important that this project goes through, but we feel like we're in a vice to, it's been going through quickly, and that's why we're just really trying to reflect, because this legacy will live with us for many years to come. I have a couple of questions. Was there a BA done prior when this land was purchased? Because that BA number, I mean, in my experience, that seems low to me for this project. Was there another BA that was done that we can compare it to, or?
The BA costs? Is that
Yeah,
the
just
number
the
you?
cost. I mean, there's no baseline environmental assessment that was not done previous to?
There was a,
Yeah, that was 1997.
at the time of purchase.
At the time of purchase, okay.
A 5-year EVA.
Okay, well, I guess I'm confused then why there's 20,000 for the BA. Is that just that's just,
Because you don't have the same ownership of the same people.
There'll be a transfer.
It's being transferred to.
okay, because the
So there'll be multiple BAs for different parties.
okay, and that's our responsibility as a public.
No, that's the developers, the purchasers.
Okay, so I guess that, this one line is very confusing.
The
And I know it's
second column?
the second column, because it says local funds be the baseline environmental assessment. My understanding of when I looked at this last time, was under the development. Now it's under public fund line. Did that change, or did I misunderstand that?
I'd have to go back and compare the two, but the second column, for lack of a better word, is more of an overflow. It's you spend the CMI grant and loan, and then the $800,000 is the additional TIF. And we tried to split it up between the two columns, between the CMI program and the TIF, because it's going to fall into one of those buckets.
Okay.
And if you'd like to move some money over into a different column, I mean, that's all possible. But at the end of the day, when there's $2.8 million of eligible costs, we can break it up any way we want into either category. It's all going to be under a TIF or grant program.
Okay, so the SV is estimated with the developer, which the developer has excellent experience in this community, so I'm assuming that's very close. If that SV, can you give us a timeline, what the TIF capture? Because what my concern is, I mean, we're going to make this go through somehow, because we want this to be cleaned up. There's just and it's complex, and there's so many unknowns that we just don't understand. But there's no TIF capture realization. There's no estimate on what that is. I mean, that could be 20 years, it could be 5 years, it could be 8 years.
So you know the
Now, my
numbers.
understanding is maybe that's what's going to be negotiated in the Brownfield Authority.
Yes.
And if that's it, then,
The next step would be to go through that, but to try to tell the council, basically, the proposal would be approximately, there's a grant of $1 million.
oh, he can't hear, people can't hear you on the,
Sorry, there's a grant of $1 million that doesn't need to be repaid. The loan, the way it's structured, is the first 5 years, there's no repayment and no interest.
right,
And then from years 5 through 15,
Right.
it gets repaid. Based on this first proposal where we're at, or not first, based on this proposal, there's a capture of about $100,000 per year for that one phase of that one parcel, which would pay for all of would pay for the loan back in 10 years.
okay.
So if you're looking for a number, that's what it is. So from that standpoint, the $1 million loan would be repaid in 10 years.
But that's just $1 million loan, because then,
Correct.
and so that's where the confusion comes in, because the TIF money then also has to pay back that 800,000 or whatever that number may be. So that's a little, that's where the.
It's going to be determined based on what we
Okay.
don't know, and we can't determine at this point. So we're giving our best estimate as to what we're trying to accomplish with those funds.
And I really do appreciate that, but that's where the sticking point is, that's where the confusion is coming in, I think, for pretty much every one of us up here. So if it was just me, I would say, okay, I just can't get it. But that's where the sticking point is.
I availed myself to look at the last packet that we looked at, and the loan application itself was not made a part of our public packet, and therefore it wasn't in the materials that I reviewed.
Then I
for the
apologize.
council
I
meeting.
misspoke.
Which is fine, but the broader point is that 2 weeks ago, we were talking about $2 million as sort of being the bucket in play for the remediation. Tonight, it's $2.8 million. The scope has changed. And so, again, I don't want to make a bigger mountain out of maybe a foothill, and say, okay, we realize now that there's some upside risk here in terms of the cost of doing this, and that needs to be a part of the negotiation at the brownfield plan, and then ultimately at City Council. I get that. I'm again comfortable with the footnote language that we've talked about. I still, the taxable value discussion, I'll take that offline. Again, there's a footnote there. I'm happy to make a motion to authorize city administration to execute the grant applications and to pass the resolution necessary and execute the memorandum of understanding with the disclosure that the added condition that the local contribution matter and the taxable value calculations are based on numbers that have been presented by the developer, to which this council has not agreed or assented, but will be subject to future review and recommendation, I suppose, by the relevant parties who are responsible for doing that. That's the base motion. If council or administration has any recommendations on how to shape that further, I'm certainly open to it. My eyes are wide open on this one. I want to proceed. I want to see this work. But I think this is going to require, all the parties to, be realistic about everyone's expectations and ability to address them, perhaps in the way that fits neatly in their own pro forma box. I think we're going to be back here on this subject a number of times. So
I have a motion by the Councilmember Cuthbertson. Do I have a second on the motion?
Support.
Support by Giovanelli. Madam, the Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, I would like the motion actually to be read back, so I know that it's that, okay, we need to have some highlights, because I want to make sure that what you get in there is.
Will you go back and that's what should go back in verbatim?
Verbatim?
Yes.
Okay.
And to include, again, specifically the caveats that have been discussed by council this evening are certainly to be incorporated by reference to my motion.
And I would really appreciate, this is going to be extremely important in the minutes to have this conversation. Okay.
I will support it based on that information, your explanation. I understand why the state wants the skin in the game. I get that. For this council, those numbers, though, that's uncomfortable for us with those numbers. We understood the 2.0 million. But I do think that we do need to move forward. I know that the woman that has been visiting us, working with us, she understands where we're coming from, but she's not here. She won't see it. It'll get passed on to several people before that. But like I said, I think the motion goes far enough to get those caveats in there that we need to move forward. So any other discussion on the motion? Madam Clerk, the roll, please.
Belden?
Yes.
Russell?
Yes.
Vixen?
Yes.
Cuthbertson?
Yes.
Giovanelli?
Yes.
Peterson?
Yes.
More to come. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, we will go to item C, which is discussion regarding the historic ordinance. Mr. City Manager.
Yep, as I drafted in my memo, the item is up for discussion. Councilmember Cuthbertson requested this be placed on our April 24th agenda. I noted and included in the packet the historic district ordinance, as well as from an attorney who drafted a letter pertaining to a portion of the ordinance, in relations to the landmark properties. I also highlighted the Historic Study Committee's Historic District Study Committee's April 5th meeting, that they made a recommendation to have the portion of the ordinance regarding the landmark property list actually to be removed. At the conclusion, they made a motion to do that. However, to preserve the rest of the ordinance. They further suggested that council and their body schedule a workshop or a meeting to review the pros and cons of landmark property designations. They've gathered quite a bit of information, and I saw even several other emails even this evening, and I know there's several of them in the audience as well.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and open this to comment now before council starts to deliberate. Does any person want to come up and speak to this matter this evening? Please.
Good evening, everyone. Brian Dunphy, President of the Rochester Avon Historical Society. I'm here with a number of people of like mind to express my encouragement for council to hold its resolve on proceeding with implementing its historic districts ordinance. I think that we can go by the example of our fellow communities. Both Rochester Hills and Oakland Township have had historic districts established for a number of years. It works in those municipalities. I see no reason why it can't work here. If it takes some tweaking of the ordinance to make it work, I would urge council to look at that seriously. But when you look around in this community, one of the most impressive things about it, one of the things that makes this community the kind of community that we all want to live and work in, is the fact that we have all this wealth of historic resources around us, and in particular in the city of Rochester. Unfortunately, the city of Rochester really is lagging behind its neighbor communities right now in protecting those resources, and I would urge all the council members to really consider what we have at stake here and what we could potentially lose forever. I understand the concerns about wanting to give people the flexibility of their property, but there's no question that there's already ordinances on the books, planning ordinances, zoning, or anti-blight ordinances, building code ordinances that already tell property owners what they can do with their property. To me, historic preservation ordinance is really no different from that. And again, it's a matter of, do we consider historic preservation to be enough of a community good that we are willing to take the steps necessary to protect the historic resources in this city? And I just want to, again, give my personal encouragement to council. You've already started down the right road. You need to finish that process, get those historic districts in place, and do what we need to protect the city's historic resources. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comment in this item?
Rod Wilson, past president of the Rochester Avon Historical Society. And I would just like to echo what Brian said. Over the years, I've been working with nonprofits and trying to make improvements in this city for 45 years. And over those years, everybody says, boy, we've really maintained it. Main Street is to the point today where it cannot be on the National Register of Historic Places because so many of the fronts of the buildings have been changed. The rest of the building may be there, but the fronts have changed to a degree that they, right now, if they were all changed back, you could be on the National Register. When people move to this community, they think of it as a historic community. And I'm going to say something that a lady who's in the audience told me lots of years ago. And that's something that Gail Kemner said to me. She said, this community is like a tapestry. And consider all of the buildings, and you go and you knock down this building, and then you knock down that building, and you don't protect this building. Pretty soon your tapestry has a bunch of holes in it. And if you put a new front on a building, it's like taking that flower that's on the tapestry and replacing it with maybe a dandelion. But the whole tapestry changes. And pretty soon you don't have what you thought you had. So I would just give, yes, I'm all for people's rights, property rights, but you also have a fiduciary responsibility to protect the assets of the community. And it's a real fine line, I know, to walk down that line. So I just hope you give it very serious consideration and move forward in a positive way.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson. Any other comments this evening?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Mark Smith, 303 East University Drive and 203 East University Drive, commonly known as the elevator and the depot. The discussion before you tonight is about the historic landmark designation. I would only like to speak to the gentleman who is the current president of the Avon Historical's comment about code and it being spread across all people and everybody it applies to. The historic landmark designation specifically discriminates against 11 properties now in this community. Code is not evenly enforced on those 11 properties. That is a discriminatory act in your ordinance, and I would recommend that you remove it as is being discussed tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to get up and talk about property rights again. And, I had a friend tell me a story that I mentioned to Rob Ray during break at the last meeting about somebody who wanted to expand their older home, their probably historic home from what I understood. Can't tell you where it is, don't know the guy's name. But he was denied removal of trees. So the house was sold to a developer. House gone, trees gone, everything gone. Something's wrong with this picture. And properties aren't being treated equally. I mean, it took our Supreme Court 30 years to overturn Pole Town, which destroyed a community. They were cited in the Wall Street Journal as one of the best, if not the best courts in the nation. And I'm in that same position right now with my property and your master plan. It can't be used for anything because it will be non-conforming unless you have the planning commission amend the ordinance and fix it. You can't just go on and say, oh, we'll do this when we do the zoning. No, those are two distinct different functions, so things get all messed up here. But back to the property rights, I think that taking people and putting their property on a list because you pick these properties and they're important, but yet I watch other homes get torn down that are from the 1800s every week almost, sometimes every 2 weeks maybe, but it's really happening frequently. And I don't think it would be politically popular if you put all of those homes on a list, quite honestly. So you have to, people who want those types of communities tend to purchase those kinds of homes for that kind of reason. Let's take Romeo for an example. People who want to live in the historic district, which is most of the town, but not all of it. They live there, and they live by those rules. But they buy it knowing what they're going into. This whole thing was sold as voluntary. So I think you should go back to that and remember that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Douglas. Any other comment this evening on this item?
The properties that were designated as landmark properties, the reason that was done was to indicate that we value those properties higher than their choice, the cream of the crop, so to speak. And we have no intention of being discriminatory at all. Our whole effort with this, as you know, I'm on the Historic District Study Committee, and we've been working since 2012. But our effort has been to make this community better, not to hurt anyone, not to make anyone feel that we were going to be coming along with a hammer or a gun or something. We just want to assist people to do the best they can for what they have. And we have some beautiful properties here in Rochester, and we need to keep them. And many people recognize it, but they're also afraid that maybe we will be too hard on them. And that is not the plan.
Thank you. Thank you, Gail. Any other comments on this item? All right. Councilmember Cuthbertson.
Thank you. As I said, 2 meetings ago, in deciding the presence of one of these historic landmark properties on being removed from the list for something other than its historic basis, in my view, happens to effectively waive that section of the ordinance. To my eye, it's no longer enforceable in good faith before a court, and I think that really in the course of addressing this matter, the council really would have been much better off having this discussion about the future of the ordinance as a generic matter, understanding how it is being applied and what that means to people, than haul off and effectively repeal an ordinance after the fact through an what I consider as a policy matter to be an ill-considered vote, but as a timing matter, I think it actually probably put us in legal harm's way more so than it helped us in the long run. But as a result, it was my request that we put discussion of this ordinance, squarely in front of the city as a policy matter. What is this? Does it matter to us? How should it change? How shouldn't it change? And to try to have that in a reasonable way where all sides of the conversation are aware and present in the discussions. Again, the ordinance passed unanimously. There's been discussions. It was sold as this or that. I think people are looking for a little cover on that issue, but it's not really what's important in this discussion right now. What's important is do we, as a go-forward basis, do we have the wherewithal and the stomach to say, with respect to a number of historic assets, do we want to protect those? And are we willing to put them now into what ultimately I think has to be a discussion about historic districts? We received a letter from Susan Friedlander. I actually think it's one of this is the argument I was rather expecting a long time ago when we first began to have discussions on the ramifications of this ordinance. And it's a clever one. I think the city attorney has opined that the exercise of a power less than that granted by the Historic Districts Act is somehow a violation of the act is a tough sell. But nevertheless, it's an argument that's been made. So, as I've said to my colleagues, to my eye, I think we've waived the landmark section. I think we ought to repeal it. And because we've been challenged by council for a property owner that our ordinance varies from the letter, in essence, of the Historic District Act passed by the legislature, if that argument is good for the goose, it's good for the gander, in my estimation. And we should pull every section of the ordinance that doesn't perfectly comply with the act. And so if we're going to go down the path of tinkering with this thing, we would be best suited to go to the standard form ordinance that has been repeated in community after community after community. And so that's, in essence, my proposal. That's the ordinance I want to see redrafted in front of us. I may or may not be a minority on that issue, but if we care about having the most robust, defendable ordinance, we are now on notice that not having the state law version will be used against us. And so for me, that seems fairly compelling. I want to address this notion, I mean, for me, of discrimination. It's easy to say that. It's quite frankly a knee-jerk argument that ultimately belies the motivation of the individual advancing that argument, at least in my estimation. I think it's simply an easy way to say I don't want this because I don't think it's in my best interests. And everybody has a right to, express what they think their best interests are and to pursue them. Just do it honestly. Just say, I think this hurts the economic value of my property. I don't want it. And I want to be able to bulldoze this or not bulldoze it in my discretion. And that is the nub of the argument. And I would just as soon hear that from people. But that notwithstanding, we studied something like 52 or 53 properties in this city to understand their historic significance and to create reports that could then potentially be used for the creation of historic districts. So was that act discriminatory? At what point does a city's review and understanding of historical assets under color of the historic district ordinance, where does it end? I have a conversation with the city manager that, wow, that's a really neat building. I bet it has historic value. Am I discriminating? Where does that conversation reasonably end? And in truth, the legislature said, look, here's a way we think you should do that. And based on the immaturity of the discussion in this community concerning this concept, I think this council would be very wise to look to exactly what the state law says and follow it to the letter, because we can defend it. And if, and only if, 4 members of this council want to put a property into a district that's been properly studied, has been properly noticed in accordance with the act, can it ever happen? And based on the vote that I saw happen the other night, it's clear that there is not a functional majority that is interested in putting properties into historic districts, or even historic district light, as one person has called it. So let's get real about what the potential threat is as it's being called, or the discrimination that's being proffered. If this matters, and I think it does, then I think we ought to redraft the ordinance, and it ought to be done in a way that perfectly conforms with state law. And I'd like to make a motion this evening to request the city administration or city attorney to develop draft ordinance language that, in essence, executes that intent.
I have a motion by Councilmember Cuthbertson. Do I have a second on the motion? Support by Councilmember Giovanelli. Discussion. I have some questions. So, we would be able to look at both motions side by side, so I would then see the difference, because my concern, and I'm not going to go back and go down the road of what happened a couple weeks ago. I explained myself then. The opt-in and the work that's been done, I hate to see it lost. That being said, I understand where you're coming from, Councilmember Cuthbertson, in this discussion. So if we saw them both side by side, I could then see what the difference is and where our ordinance varied and where it is similar to the state, and then make a better decision from my end on what our ordinance did do compared to what the state's ordinance. I don't know if that makes any sense, but see, to me, and that's probably something I should have asked for in the beginning, to be perfectly honest, then I would have had a better understanding at this end on what's coming down, because I do believe in historic preservation, and I do want to see people have the ability to opt in and have a district letting them opt into that district. So that's my comment so far. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. we have a beautiful community. The historic committees, there's several of them out here, have really tried to preserve our community. And the tightrope here is preservation, and what I'm understanding between property rights of what people want and preserve. And so, do we want to take their right away? No, we don't. At least for me. Okay, so I want to preserve as much as we can. Now, there's triggers that we can put on for demolition, for instance. If there's a farmhouse, if there's something that's significant that's on that list, and if there's a demolition permit, then we can pull that, even by the state standards. That should be a trigger for us to do something. But we can't just put a scarlet letter on these homes without giving them any compensation for it. So we want to preserve them. And all the people that I've talked to, including our conversation 2 weeks ago, their intent is not to tear down that property. It's not that that's not their intent. Their intent is to get the best investment they've invested, they've put a lot of money and care into these places. That's why they're still being preserved. And so I think the recommendation, so I won't support the motion, because I think the recommendation of the Historic Study Committee says it very well. At conclusion of the discussion, the committee made a motion to recommend to City Council to remove the landmark clause from the Historic Preservation Ordinance 27-4.8 on page 6. And basically that allows exactly what I thought the intent was for people to be able to opt in. And there's all kinds of little issues that are a problem with communication with these properties, and pictures being taken on these properties, and then the archives and the minutes. The Historic Study District Committee, there's no minutes from, I think the last minute was from January of 2015. So there's no minutes posted in the archive on the city website from 2015 of all this discussion that's been happening. So if anyone of the Historic Study Committee, if we could put those on there, that would be certainly very, very helpful. So at this point, I think it's best that we go with the recommendation from the Historic Study Committee.
Councilmember Cuthbertson.
My colleague indirectly has just argued for the very thing that the demolition permit was trigger in the landmark property ordinance. It was the intent, and that was precisely what we were talking about. And those are the limited protections that section of the ordinance provided for. If state law exists that says if there's a demo permit on something you kind of think is historic and you can stop the train, I'd love to know what that law is, because then I'd feel a lot better.
Well,
I would be perfectly happy to say, oh, gee whiz, that it's fixed. But the motion is to repeal the offending portion of the ordinance, as has been opined by one party, an attorney, and to, in essence, lay out the cleanest way possible in terms of what the state law is. With respect to the Historic District Study Committee, I think before we undertake any action to adopt any changes, which is not the purpose of the motion this evening, but rather to get text so we can discuss it specifically, is to meet with the Historic District Committee, which I believe, based on the fact that we've passed a district, I believe now has authority to basically apply and implement the Historic District Ordinance. I think if the Historic District Study Committee understood the distinction between the letter that was recently received and understood the context of saying a purely conforming state law ordinance would best serve the city in defending its ordinances, I think they might have a different opinion than what's written on this paper. So I appreciate that this is a tidy way just to potentially pull out the landmark piece and move along. But that's not a process that's, I think, one that's wise or one that will occur without a good deal more discussion.
So would it be in our best interest to have these two drafts and then meet with this historic district committee before we come, so we can get a better feedback from them? Because they've done all the work, and I think it's in our best interest to meet with them, go over these two new, the old one and then the state, compare the two, and then come back to at a council meeting, and then give a presentation on what, and then take the vote and people decide what to do then. I mean, I would really like input from that committee because they've done all the work so far, and I think they could learn something and we could learn something from them. So, I mean, is that something?
I would be happy to add that to my motion for purposes of clarifying a procedure for moving forward and evaluating the issue in more detail.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem, did you have?
The act is the Local Historic District Act 169 of 1970. And part of the problem with what we had in the past is it wasn't just demolition. If they changed the roof, if they changed something significant on the outside of the home, it wasn't just demolition. And so that's where the property right issue. Now, for me, as everyone knows, property rights trump that. If someone wants to add on to their home or to change a roof line, and that is a historic piece that that if they did not opt in, that's their right. They have invested in this property their whole, existence of owning it. And sometimes that's, several decades. So there is a difference. And I'm not sure exactly what the motion is, other than to look at just the state. Is that what the intent is?
To draft.
I'll restate it if I may.
If you could read the motion, or
To request the city attorney draft an ordinance that mirrors state laws and also meet with the Historic District Study Committee to discuss the two ordinances.
Councilmember Vixen.
I guess I don't understand it either. I mean, you want to go to the state that will then allow the council to determine that something's a historical property? I guess I don't, I'm unclear on what's the point of that. So I guess you gotta explain that to me.
I'll take another shot at
Yeah.
it. Yeah, I mean, it's the state law is written in a way, and as I understand the applicability of the Historic District Act is such that it can only be applied to properties within a district as it relates to the triggers you've just described. So a demo permit on a districted property would not trigger any authority under this body. But my point simply is to, yes, quite frankly, have an ordinance that says it conforms squarely with state law and sets forth the powers that relate to the council and all the studies that are required to put a property in, and ultimately that decision is vested at council. We've been told that our freelancing with how state law applies to this issue is in some way illegal. I don't personally happen to agree with it, but I would like to take those arguments off, those rather spurious legal arguments off the table and say, here's the most plain-suited, conforming state law ordinance that we can have. And the practical implication is that if there is and for me, I can't think of too many instances where unless a person's standing there and says, I want to be in the historic district ordinance or in the historic districts, that I would be inclined to go out of my way to create one. But I can tell you that if somebody who wants to bulldoze a property that is at front and center, my example used to be Home Bakery. Well, the good news is they opted in, which was fantastic, right? But at the end of the day, if there is another iconic building and somebody wants to bulldoze it, I certainly want to be able to have a conversation about it. And without taking out the landmark section and keeping the opt-in trigger as it was, which is not conforming with state law, we are essentially powerless to have a conversation about the future of historic structure in the city. Powerless. And so my point is not to say, hey, I want to force people in, but geez, if the state law has powers that might in limited instances be applied in rare circumstances, I want this council and future councils to have those tools. That was the balance that was trying to be struck with the previous landmark model, opt-in model, was this balance. And it's clear that some people don't want that balance. I get it. But at least then go back to the state law, give the council the power to have that conversation if it needs to. And, you'll hear me say this again in another meeting. I'm going to belabor the point. But I think looking at both options in terms of changing this needs to happen, and we need to have a conversation with the study committee or the historic district commission, whichever at this point has jurisdiction in this matter, and then come back with pros and cons to each approach and pick one and get this over with. In the meantime, I guess I'd ask the city attorney as well to potentially contact Attorney Friedlander and let her know that we're having this conversation. If litigation is imminent, I think we should take affirmative steps to remove the property, because I think we lose that argument at this point. And I'm sure that if she were to pull these minutes or this video, that she'd be inclined to include my remarks as a part of that complaint. But I just have to call it as I see it. So long answer to a short question, Mr. Vixen. I apologize.
I got it. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, the roll, please.
Dalden.
Yes.
Russell.
No.
Vixen.
No.
Cuthbertson.
Yes.
Jovenelli.
Yes.
Peterson.
No.
3-3, Your Honor. Motion failed.
Okay. Mayor Pro Tem.
I make a motion to move to approve the Rochester Historic Committee's recommendation at the Rochester City Council remove the landmark property clause from the Historic Preservation Ordinance, Section 27-4.8, page 6.
I have a motion by the Mayor Pro Tem. Do I have support on the motion? Support by Councilmember Peterson. I'm just going to say that without the state's law, with the state's statute, I don't feel comfortable without having both of them next to me, so I can make a better informed decision and working with the Historic District Commission and Committee on what they've done. Mayor Pro Tem.
Well, we can always do that at a second. This is just removing this piece, so you can always still have that state recommendation if you want to rewrite that at that point.
Well,
Because
no.
with this now, we're just keeping that in, so you still have that option, you always have the option. I'm just removing that as a recommendation.
And what I'm saying is, I would rather have both of these ordinances in front of me before I can make a decision on how to move forward. So, that's just my, opinion. Any other discussion? Madam Clerk, the roll.
Dalden.
No.
Russell.
Yes.
Vixen.
Yes.
Cuthbertson.
No.
Jovenelli.
Nope.
Peterson.
Yes.
3-3, Your Honor.
Yeah, fine, thank you.
I'd like to make a motion to table this issue to the next city council meeting for further conversation.
Do I have a support, because we will have a full.
I'm sorry, not for the second meeting, but 2 meetings.
2 meetings, thank you.
Support.
Support by Councilmember Peterson. Madam Clerk, the roll.
Belden.
Yes.
Russell.
Yes.
Vixen.
Yes.
Cuthbertson.
Yes.
Jovinelli.
Yes.
Peterson.
Yes.
Now can I go?
We can agree to wait.
If you'd like to, I'm going to take a 5-minute recess. We're going to go ahead and get started, and the rest of the council members will be walking back in shortly. I'll
Hopefully.
just go ahead, hopefully is right. Go ahead and read the next item. Consideration of a resolution confirming the special assessment district role of 2017-02. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Deputy Manager Banda wrote a pretty thorough memorandum, so I'm just going to highlight a few of the items. In his second paragraph, he explained that the committee was recommending to reduce the first year's SAD by 25%, and that would bring from 255 down to 187,500. There was an additional 5,000 that was subtracted to pay for the installation of some cameras in the platforms. His memo went on to explain basically that the previous year's assessment also included the $50,000 contribution from the DDA. Through their overall discussion, which then he continued on the back, said after a thorough discussion, the committee agreed to pass a recommendation to City Council that would be more conservative in nature than the initial request of City Council, recommending an overall SAD be reduced by only 25% versus the 50% the Council was hoping to see to ensure the trending numbers would be sustained over a 2-year period, ensuring dollars being set aside for the future capital improvements as requested by the City Council. Further, after analyzing, the group didn't need the 50,000 DDA dollars in making the numbers balance if the SAD was only reduced by the 25% of the initial assessment. They chose to recommend basically to free up the DDA's $50,000 for infrastructure projects that the City Council was seeking as part of the overall capital expenditure.
Councilmember Cuthbertson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wondered if you might undertake a matter of procedural privilege and advance item 9A for discussion, and to temporarily table discussion of item 8D in the interest of a representative for that item having endured 2.5 hours of this council meeting already.
So moved. Welcome, Mr. Vito Papalonia. Consideration of a pocket park project. Please come forward. And thank you for being so patient. Nothing worse than a hungry Italian.
Thank you, Council. We've had DDA meetings, but I think you guys have the record. Anyway, thank you very much. In your packet, I believe everybody has a copy of pocket parks that we are working on. And I actually don't want to call them a pocket park. They're small parks that we're working on in the city. We've had them designed. We've priced them out. And I'm here representing the DDA as vice chair and as chairman of the site committee. And there's 2 parks in here. The property that is we're proposing is property left over. I don't want to say left over, but that was not improved when we did our parking decks. They're in 2 strategic spots. We've created something that we feel is going to complement both of these areas. These smaller parks are something that has been in all of these surveys taken, the general public, business owners, people who shop here. There's little sitting areas, they're comfortable little areas for families, anybody walking around downtown. So they're creating that atmosphere which we're becoming known for and which is part of our makeup in Rochester. So, and in addition, when I was looking at the comments tonight, I did see a 95% approval rate for our downtown area. So as part of the DDA and the site committee, this is what we do. We've had, we're very proud that we've made some significant changes and improvements in the downtown and great participation from building owners, landowners, business owners, the general public, DPW, and all the other city services. So, you know, the downtown is improving and it will continue. These 2 parks, it is city property. We need approval of the city to do them. We are funded through the DDA. It is DDA funds that were earmarked for capital improvements. So we're looking for your approval tonight because the parks will be on city property.
Thank you, Vito. Councilmember Cuthbertson.
This is great. These projects look very nice, and from a cost standpoint, seem pretty reasonable. Appreciate the hard work, and encourage the DDA to continue to find opportunities to invest capital dollars, and so I'm happy to support this. As a matter of procedure, I'm also similarly glad that this matter is being presented to the City Council, not because, in fact, this is on city property, but rather this involves the allocation of unallocated capital dollars in the DDA budget. In line item 989.000, there's $291,000 this year in that unallocated line item, and at our last goals and objectives, we were informed that as monies are intended to be allocated from that unallocated line item, that in fact this council would be consulted, and this council would approve the expenditures related to the allocation of those dollars. And so maintaining that fidelity to this notice and comment process is very important, and one which, as we look to $446,000 living in an unallocated budget for next year, that accountability process in giving everyone in this audience a chance to see how material money is being spent, is similarly important. And so I want to reiterate my understanding, my expectation, my appreciation of that process going forward. And so I'm both, as a substantive matter, pleased to make a motion to approve the plan submitted and the allocation of the funds identified for the implementation of this project, and to get it started.
Support by Councilmember Giovanelli. Any comment on the motion? Yes, Councilmember Giovanelli.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And thanks to Site Development for this. We're blessed, and I'll put on my DDA hat for a second. So we're really blessed to have Vito and Jason Rewald involved, for gratis. They've got countless tens of hundreds of hours in kind of going through, and these two projects were heavily scrutinized at the DDA. They are coming at a great time because of the bicentennial, so they'll be done in time for the events going in and around the town. They're both properties that were identified early on as needing a little love, so they're going to get some love. And most importantly, at least from my perspective, is it really fits in well with the commitment of the DDA to sort of work both sides of the fence, if you will. We want to keep the city moving forward and do projects like this and invest in those developments that bring attention and create demand in our community, but also to dealing with the stuff under the dirt, so to speak, the infrastructure part. So real proud of the board and their efforts in this regard, and want to extend my thanks to Site Development for you guys really hard work on this one. It's good stuff.
Thank you. Tony LaPuma is also
Tony, right,
participating.
sorry, yeah, right.
He did a great job. We got a good team. We got a good
for sure.
group, so we worked very hard on it.
Indeed, yep.
So just saying, closing, thank you, Vito, for sticking around and doing the presentation. I'm on the board of the DDA, so I know this was coming. Madam Clerk, the roll, please.
Dalden?
Yes.
Russell stepped out? Yes. Dixon?
Yes.
Cuthbertson?
Yes.
Giovanelli?
Yes.
Peterson?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, I will move back to item 8D. Thank you so much. So we're on to the parking advisory recommendation on the SAD. You report from the city manager. Did Councilmember Giovanelli have anything to say on this item since you were in on the
Yeah,
tab?
sure. I'd be happy to,
Thank
through
you.
the chair. So I'm on parking advisory, and amongst my other duties as assigned, my job description around here. So we're going back and forth trying to arrive at, what was directionally palatable, that was responsible, that fulfilled our objective when we set forth with the SAD, is that we would reduce it down over time. I actually wanted it to go lower, But in talking, listening to the chief and us building a capital reserve fund, there was discussion with respect to lot surfacing stuff that had to be done that we did not have money set aside for. So that was sort of built into the pro forma, which actually helped sway my decision to support this directionally. And I think when we voted on it as council people, it was like, all right, we're going to look at this every year, and so this is why we sit here right now and we're looking at it. We think the PAC's opinion is, when you guys have already read it, but this is the responsible action to take this year, knowing that we're going to be able to take another bite at the apple next year. It wasn't too long ago we were sitting up here scrambling, trying to find a bunch of holes to fill in that budget, and by the grace of God and some wise decisions that were made by council in changing how the structures and how the parking situation pays for itself, we're in a good spot. We're in a good spot. We're in a directionally okay spot right now. So I would hate to see us put ourselves in the hole, so to speak, 1 year and take a look at it again next year. But the chief's description of this incoming service stuff that's not warranty, that's going to be needed to done to the decks, is what swayed me to keep the SID in place. Just on background.
And I'll just follow up that my reason was I thought we should be more conservative again this year because we had to change that pro forma when it came to the rates, and I didn't want to have to backstep on that. And for me, it was more conservative and beneficial if we kept it only lowered it a little bit. That way we wouldn't have to backtrack. And I felt that with the cost that came up that we didn't really know about coming up, that it would be, and we didn't promise them any kind of, I know that this council had made a suggestion on a rate, but the business owners now have gotten into the groove of what is involved in this. And I can say from my neighbor's standpoint, everybody's gotten used to it. They see the merits of it. So for me, it was easier to do this smaller step back this year, cover those costs that needed to be covered, and then again look at it the last year. But I didn't want to have to go backwards and then ask for more the third year and move it up. So for me, this was a step down that I could live with, that I thought was fair. So
If council's
Yes.
okay, I was going to say the appropriate action would be to pass the resolution confirming the parking platform special assessment district role 2017-01.
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember Giovanelli. Do I have a support?
Support.
Support by the Mayor Pro Tem. Councilmember Cuthbertson.
Thank you. I appreciate the review of the matter, which in fact, based on our somewhat testy discussion we had the last meeting, did indicate that council took a policy recommendation in this matter that contemplated a 50% reduction in the SAD. And hearing from my colleagues some specifics as to why they're recommending a change from that desired policy makes a bit more sense to me now. That said, I also think there's an element of a DDA $50,000 budget plug in play as the upside. But, you know, can I live with that? I guess. You know, if that was not going away and, you know, we were at 25%, you know, I'd feel better about the situation. But I guess as my esteemed colleague says, it is what it is in a lot of instances. But I do think it's important to point that what I see as a slight anomaly to the narrative out in this regard. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
Madam Mayor,
Councilmember Peterson.
Yes, thank you. I have never been in favor of the SADs and the businesses downtown, and I would not be able to support this evening.
Any other discussion? Madam Clerk, the roll.
Sullivan.
Yes.
Russell.
Yes.
Dixon.
No.
Cuthbertson.
Yes.
Giovanelli.
Yes.
And Peterson.
No.
4-2, Your Honor.
Thank you. Next, we will go on to consideration of a resolution confirming the designation of the street administrator as required by Act 51. Mr. City Manager.
Yep, this one's a quick and simple one. Yep, go ahead.
Okay. Motion by Councilmember Giovanelli.
Support.
Support by Councilmember Cuthbertson. Madam Clerk, the roll.
Dalton?
Yes.
Russell?
Yes.
Dixon?
Yes.
Cuthbertson?
Yes.
Giovanelli?
Yes.
Peterson?
Yes.
Next is item F, discussion regarding information request to city manager from council members. This item was discussed at another meeting. My follow-up would be, from a policy standpoint, does council have any suggestions on how they would like to handle those requests? Mr. City Manager, do you have anything to add to that?
At this time?
Okay. Councilmember Giovanelli.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And just from my perspective, this kind of came up because I was asking for stuff, and Anthony's like, well, I'm getting stuff for so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so, where does this fit in the line? There was really a sort of a gray area and a pecking order as to, who gets what, and, staff is doing their normal job, and then they've got 7 bosses up here that are also asking for stuff on a, near constant basis. So we need the information that we need to do our work, of course, but it just felt like they didn't know which master to make happy first, so they ended up making nobody happy. So I thought it would be worthwhile for us to entertain that discussion to try and get at if it's, an agreement as to process or how that flow goes. I have no idea. What I don't want to have happen is council not get what they want, right?
Yes.
But I also want there to be some semblance of order and discipline as to how we go at that, tasking administration to get stuff.
Could I make a suggestion that maybe administration comes up with 2 or 3 examples? So if it's a simple ask for a number such and such and it takes less than a half hour, you do this. If it's a formal request to do a presentation, that it come to council vote on it or nod their heads that they want to do something. So we have maybe 3 tiers that we work from. But ideally, I'd like the big items to come to council. Council then decide if it's going to go further as a big project, like the infrastructure. That's an example that I would say was a bigger request from a council member. We all agreed that is something we need to start working on. We formed a committee and moved forward. So, Councilmember Cuthbertson, did you?
Yeah, I'm sensitive to the balancing mechanism that's being suggested. I wasn't aware that there was a problem, candidly. It seems
I don't ask.
a little bit
Yeah.
of a surprise to me. But if a council member wants to undertake a searching policy review of a major item affecting this community, I think you raise it in miscellaneous and say, geez, I want to put this on the agenda because this is an important issue. And that would be the way to deal with that. Short of that, I think something that can be done quickly in terms of managing expectations is something that administration would be well to do. If it's something that's more involved, say, that's more involved, I think it's going to take this amount of time, and oh, by the way, I have, 9 other requests that, are of a certain size, and it's going to take me a little while to do that. What I don't want to back into is city council voting on whether or not council members get, middle tiers worth of information, because we have an absolute duty to ask questions, get data that supports good decision making, and I don't want to over formalize that from an approval standpoint, because I candidly don't, other than knowing it's going to take a long time, I don't really think that beyond changing, if I want to change major policy issues, that's something I come here with. But short of that, I don't think I have to get council approval to get information that's important to me to make a good decision. If administration says, hey, look, I'm swamped, dear council, I'm getting a lot of questions in these areas. Do we need to have a policy discussion about this? That might be a way of saying there's this feedback loop from administration coming in that points out, a common request thing and or subject, and we decide whether or not we want to have a policy discussion on it. So I almost see it as a way to have administration, much like the ZBA ends up sending, when there's a bunch of things that are on a certain issue, they typically send that to the planning commission to say, hey, look, we're getting a lot of action on this area. You should maybe think about this. That might be a way to, streamline some of this, and frankly, stop you from getting 4 different people asking you, in essence, the same question.
So, Councilmember Peterson.
Yes, Madam Mayor. And I just think it would be nice that if there was other information that sometimes I feel I'm not getting other information that may have been, given, to have that backup information to receive. So it would be nice. I'm not one to contact and ask for the things without kind of going through the chain, so I know, but I think some of this, even tonight on more of the historic, I understand there was information that was submitted to the city, but we didn't receive it. More of,
Yeah, so, no, I don't know that.
oh, okay. Well, that's what I was told, and I was like, well, I didn't receive anything additional, so I didn't have more information.
Your Honor.
Yes.
There was a letter submitted, but it was the letter that was in the packet.
Oh, that was the same one?
There was.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Winokur dropped off that same exact letter, and I compared it to make sure, and it was the same one that was already in the packet, so there was no need to recopy it and give it to you this evening.
Okay, I'm not even exactly sure what the information was that was submitted, but I would just like more background information. I don't want to have to ask for it. I just think if you find it appropriate, that it's just put in the packet for.
Yeah, and what I've tried to do, as you probably have known, you've seen more emails from the city manager. When he sends me something, I will say, I want the whole council to see this. It gets to be where the tree, I'll give the perfect example of the tree getting cut down.
Right.
We have to be careful, when we get into that thread with the texting and that. But it comes to a point where it comes to me, and then 9.5 times out of 10, I'm like, let council know. When it gets to the level that I want you to know before the community knows. So when it's an incident with the police, the fire, you are notified as soon as I am notified. So that information is getting to you on a timely manner. So I think I'm getting some feedback on where we need to go. I think I'll work with the city manager to come up with some maybe ways that when council does make a suggestion, if the city administration is too busy, then the council member needs to then, take a step back and say, okay, I got to wait a couple days because they're working on other stuff. So is everybody okay with this moving forward? All right.
And again, I just want to note, so my role is also to make sure that you guys are following the Open Meetings Act. So that's why there's a process and a chain. And I know sometimes that might seem cumbersome, but there's reasons that we do that.
Yep. All right, next we will move on to item 9B, which is consideration of the following mayor nominations to the Planning Commission for 2 regular seats. So I would like to nominate Dennis McGee for the position that is expiring May 31st of 2018. So basically, Joe Torre's slot, he resigned. His is up next year, so I'd like to nominate Dennis for his position, so it's a year replacement. And then for the next council meeting, I'd like to nominate Joffrey Petrikoff for the position of Eldon, but it's actually coming up in May anyway, so it'd be a 3-year position. I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, I can further clarify it.
And I just like.
So, go ahead.
No, I would just like to add, Madam Mayor, I think they're both very good candidates for that.
So we can vote on those next meeting. Receipt of the quarterly financial report. Mr. City Manager.
Yeah, in the absence of the finance director, I'm going to be here, but I'm going to handle this one. But our assistant finance director is also in the audience, so if there's some technical questions. Anthony prepared this last week the current quarterly report. He highlighted several items. I think there's about 5 or 6 different bullet points. One that I want to call everybody's attention to is bullet point 4, and that was Anthony's analysis in regards to the revolving vehicle and equipment fund. In particular, last year, council passed the authorization to purchase a fire department squad. As it took a 13 to 15 month kind of order, this is one that has to have a chassis, and then there's specific equipment. Basically, Anthony is noting here at this particular time although there is a discount for that prepayment of the chassis, that the outright purchase of this vehicle, around $540,000, will really bring our fund down. So he's been working along with the fire chief and the company to actually go on a basically lease to buy option, and that will be coming forward. However, I just wanted to note in this quarterly report that he was highlighting this, and that there is a lease to buy option that's going to be coming before council in the future.
Council questions on this item? I know the Mayor Pro Tem, you had some.
Yeah, so when we approved this purchase, was it to be, I thought when we did from revolving equipment fund that we put some monies away over time and that it doesn't take this big bulk, down significantly in case something else breaks down or then we don't have the funding.
That's traditionally the process. We actually purchased this specific vehicle. We bought it used in 2005. So it hasn't had, if it was a brand new vehicle, we would have had more time to continue to actually fund up to that purchase price. When I went back and looked at the minutes, the question that Councilman Ben Giovanelli asked Anthony at the time was, do we have the funds and would we get this discount? So it kind of seemed like a no-brainer. We technically do have the funds. However, I feel that the level that we'd be going down at, which would be down to about $250,000, is getting where I feel a little uncomfortable. I prefer actually to do a lease to purchase and keep that fund balance a little bit higher. So if we do have other equipment that does break and we need an emergency purchase or lease, we would have the funds to do it. Great question, though.
Any other? Yes.
So will this affect the budget that's being presented on May 8th? Do we need to make some?
It will actually put more dollars back into the revolving equipment when we do the quarterly adjustment at the end of the fiscal year for the current budget. So it won't impact, other than the funds will actually go up higher.
Okay.
So there's nothing that would actually, no action that would be needed.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions in this council? All right, consideration of a report regarding yearly renewal of public right-of-way outdoor dining agreements for Rochester Bistro, Giorgio's Pizza and Pasta, Gus O'Connor's, Cruisemere, and Sanders Candy.
Motion to accept.
Motion to, okay. Motion by Councilmember Peterson. Go ahead.
Doesn't matter. Support.
Support by the Mayor Pro Tem. Madam Clerk, the roll.
Dalvin?
Yes.
Russell?
Yes.
Dixon?
Yes.
Cuthbertson?
Yes.
Giovanelli?
Yes.
Peterson?
Yes.
Next, receive a report from the DDA liaison. Councilmember Peterson.
So I had my phone out. Yes.
And actually, now we have the minutes or the motion.
Oh, is that why you put that in there?
Yeah, that.
Yeah, I was going to say, maybe when you're looking through that, we have, as
just
council
mentioned.
requested,
Okay.
put the
Yep.
agendas
Okay.
in the minutes in the packets.
And I thought it was part of the dining too downtown. Okay, so we actually had an update from June Hoppeluck from the Historical Commission with the update on the Heritage Days and what was progressing with that and their involvement with the bicentennial. Councilmember Rob Ray did a city infrastructure presentation for the DDA, and that went over very well. There was a proposed amendment to the 2018 draft budget that Mark Albrecht, chairman, had discussed. And then there was, as you witnessed tonight, the request for the approval of the pocket parks to be sent to City Council. And the good news was Christie announced that the Open Late Thursdays promotion is going on, and we have a lot of downtown businesses that will be open late on Thursdays now. And Christie and some others from the DDA will be attending the Main Street Oakland County main event on May 11th, where hopefully we'll be bringing home quite a few awards. And that was overall the meeting. It was very good, though.
Thank you, Councilmember Peterson. Mayor Pro Tem, PSD.
Yes, we had a meeting on the 11th, and it was really exciting and lots of fun. March Madness, we had over 1,500 entries of people spending $100 or more, and the person that won only spent only turned in one time.
Oh, my
And so she
goodness.
thought it was, she didn't think it was real. She thought it was a fake phone call. Also, the farmer's market is opening May 6th. Late nights Thursdays, just as Councilmember Peterson was talking about. We are starting with deck art, and so that's going to be April 11th, I think
Oh,
May 11th, that first Thursday. And then, with the farmer's market, I forgot to add, we are adding the WIC program, so that's kind of a cool thing for the farmer's market. There's other people being added to the farmer's market, so that's exciting, but that's really the highlights.
Thank you. New business for referral and miscellaneous. Mr. City Manager.
All right, so the first item was the check registers. There's both the April 13th and April 19th. Other than that, for miscellaneous, again, I'll highlight on May 8th, we'll have the final budget for adoption for council's consideration. Again, highlight that we are still looking for and advertising for that crossing guard. So we do have that position posted. You may have noticed the street sweeping, crack sealing, and chipping is all started. So we're definitely in the full swing of spring. Some of that information is also posted on our website. So if you're looking to see where some of that's actually taking place, that's listed on our website. And the final thing I want to note is this Friday at 2 p.m., the Arbor Day tree planting is going to be happening at 2 p.m. Near the band shell in the municipal park.
Thank you.
What day was that?
That's this Friday.
Friday.
At 2 p.m.
Miscellaneous. Madam Clerk.
Just a reminder that tomorrow is the deadline to submit petitions for city council, and 4 o'clock is the deadline. And just for council's knowledge, we have 5 qualified candidates at this point in time. So that's all I
Thanks.
have, Your Honor.
Mr. City Attorney.
Nothing, thank you.
Councilmember Bixson.
Yes, I have a couple things. First, I apologize for missing the last meeting. I was ill, so I had every intention of attending. Second, this Friday is the OPC signature event with Frank Sinatra cover band or whatever you call that.
He's back from the dead.
So that should be a good event. There's going to be casino stuff, and it's a good fundraiser for OPC Meals on Wheels. Chief will be there. No, I don't know that. And then also just my wife and I were walking on Saturday afternoon with the Earth Day, and it was extremely crowded, a lot of people downtown. And so I thought that was good to see everybody downtown. It was a beautiful day. And also I jokingly say I saw more Bernie Sanders T-shirts in Rochester than I've ever seen before. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Giovanelli.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, 2 things. So I missed the last meeting as well. I'm not sorry I missed because I had center court tickets to the Palace for the last game for the Pistons being played. And I love you guys dearly, but that was awesome. It was so good. So I would respectfully ask for an excused absence for myself and for Councilmember Bixson for missing the last meeting.
So Councilmember Peterson, support by the Mayor Pro Tem. Madam Clerk, the roll, please.
Dalden?
Yes.
Russell?
Yes.
Dixon?
Yes, and thank you.
Cuthbertson?
Yes.
Giovanelli?
Yes.
Peterson?
Yes.
It's dollar cost averaging, Stuart. You get them 2 for 1.
Yeah.
Anything else?
No, ma'am. Thank you.
Councilmember Cuthbertson.
Nothing this evening.
Councilmember Peterson.
Just one thing, if we could have all the special events put on the city calendar. People have been asking, so they know what's going on in the park and that, so since this was in there, I thought I'd bring it up.
Good idea. Mayor Pro Tem.
Yes, a couple things. Reminder that there's still 3 water sewer for the residents, or I don't know what dates though. I know there's one at OPC, the library, and City Hall. But
I have those posted on our website. I don't have it right in front of me, but throughout the next 2 months, as the council has extended the deadline for the one-time irrigation meter, we've already had a couple of those meetings, and there are three more left.
yes, so stay tuned to those. This will be my very first signature event that I'm missing for OPC because my son is graduating. I know, so we're so excited. And I'm sorry I had to step out for the Pocket Park. My mom is very ill in another state, and so everything kind of blew up. But was there any discussion on the Pocket Park cutting down the tree where Domino's is off University?
We're not doing that park.
Nope,
Okay.
there was no
Good.
no
Just want
discussion.
to make sure I didn't miss that. And I think that was it. Thank you.
Any other miscellaneous this evening?
I wasn't able to get in, Sue Douglas, North Main Street. I think one of the things with the historic districts, you know, as I understand it, the state law doesn't have the opt-in, and that's probably one of the biggest differences. And I've seen places in Rochester Hills that were designated historics that were bought up. One was the Eddy Farmhouse by Gilbert and Venatelli, and they just let it rot until they were allowed to tear it down. And there was one in the historic village too that, you know, so those things can happen. So the question becomes, you know, how much are you willing to spend of our money to defend these things if you end up having to go in a court on a lot of them?
Thank you.
That's bothersome to me.
Thank you.
And I think you have to take that into the consideration. The other thing, in going through the master plan, I found some pretty good detail in some areas, like in the downtown edge areas that you're looking at on height restrictions, even though they're under the those districts, you know, special project district. So you do have that covered in several areas, but all of the old apartments in this city are under special project. I can't find anything that says anything about any height. I've been going around saying 6 stories. I don't know where I got that from, except a newspaper article years ago, because it isn't in writing anywhere. So I guess if you want to tear the apartments down over by Great Oaks there, if you had the right council and wanted to put up 20 stories, you could. Am I right? I hope I'm wrong.
Thank you.
So if you guys would look into that and
Thank
maybe
you,
want to
definitely.
look at that for some additional detail, because I don't want
Okay.
your wife to get upset.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms.
All right.
Douglas. Thank you.
But I just can't find that kind of detail in there. 6 don't even come up 6 stories. You can't do a search. I mean, it isn't there, and I've read every word. And
Thank
I
you.
have some other stuff I'm putting together for you.
Thank
So,
you.
Thank you.
I just finally want to say thank everybody for coming to the State of the City address. I got a lot of positive feedback on the new seating, and everybody did a great job. So thank you, Council, for your support. And everybody have a good evening.